4 minutes after.
Oh.
All right, so we're going to call to order the meeting of the Village of Sandalwood Lake South Homeowners Association for Thursday, May the 21st, 2020. All right, roll call. Joe Costello.
Here.
Mary Lou Barnes.
Present.
Larry Rocco, present. Chris Christoff.
Here.
Natalia Franklin.
Present.
Okay. Now, approval of the posting of the meeting. Everything was done.
Posted Tuesday. Yep.
Okay. All right, so it was posted in a timely manner. Now, the approval of the minutes from our prior two meetings, March the 19th and April the 30th. We don't have any minutes written.
I do for April,
Oh, you
but
do?
nobody asked of me for them, and so I didn't recap
Okay.
it. But I've got 3 pages.
All right, so what I was going to propose, Mary Lou, since you take good notes,
Okay.
I was going to propose that we appoint you as our secretary of the board, and you could take the notes and do our minutes for us.
Well, here's my problem. I do have a computer at home now, but I'm working. I'm doing my actual work on it, not association business. I can try for you, but once I go back, like you've gone back, I understand. Once I'm back in the office up in Palm Beach Gardens, I probably will not be able to be the secretary. But maybe for a month or two, I could be acting secretary,
Okay.
and I'll do my best.
All right, and I think Randall and Natalia have minutes from the meeting on the 30th of March.
Well, the one April 30th is the one I have, the one we did by Zoom.
Yeah.
I took extensive notes, plus they recorded, and you recorded too, didn't
I
you?
think I have a recording. I know she has a recording.
Zoom
Yeah, so
recorded.
we have 2 or 3 recordings. of
Randall
the Zoom.
recording always.
And my written notes, so maybe I'll run my written notes past you, and then you can see if there's anything else on the recordings.
It's on internet.
I would greatly
upload.
appreciate it, Mary Lou,
All right,
to give us a little
It's
help
on
for the
YouTube,
time being.
our meetings.
Okay. But just, I can't promise you, I'll try to do it for a few
All right,
months.
well, that's all we can ask is that you do your
because
best.
when I get back to work,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, but you probably got your unemployment. I never got unemployment.
Yeah.
And I guess when I got my stimulus check last week.
Yeah.
Everybody else I know got it 2 months ago and a month ago. So
All right, so we're gonna,
I don't like it.
Send it back.
Or share it.
okay, now, in my president's report, and we're gonna discuss this in more detail, some of it, when Chris does his report. But I want to answer Natalia's concerns regarding renters. And I apologize, Natalia, that I didn't have time to get into it, but I'm back at work, and obviously that's my priority. I told you I will answer any questions you have at the meeting. But your concerns about renters confuses me a little bit, because we have taken numerous steps to clamp down on rentals in here, and they were all approved by the board. And I'm adhering to those guidelines that were approved by the board, and now you seem to think we're being too strict. And then on the other side of the coin, you think our attorney's fees are too high. And that confuses me, because the majority of our attorney's fees, and Chris may disagree with this somewhat, but I feel, because I have to call Rawson a lot to get his advice before I do anything, because I have to make sure we're legal to do it. The majority of our costs for our attorney come from rentals and their landlords. So I am confused as to why you want me to be easy on landlords.
If you read the letter, what he wrote, he give the steps, what is wrong and what he want we to do. It's not means easy or something, but we are prejudiced to them.
Are you
If you
referring
read
to-
the letter from beginning to end,
Steve.
you will
Yeah.
be, you will, I do not know, you probably did not read the letter if you say that.
But
He
I'm
say
not-
constructive things what we need to change.
Well,
Or
there's some.
consider.
It's
We
important.
don't need to change him because then we're adhering to what he wants.
You just read the letter, you see
I-
what he
I
proposed,
read it.
right things to do. It's not anything major.
I read it. This guy is
But it's
pleading
right
his
by
case.
us as we approve the way the.
We
Let's
never,
keep
we
it
never
down.
approve
Well,
anything.
So the world
because
doesn't hear,
We
let's
don't
keep
have
it
a
down.
microphone and I want everybody to hear.
No, we can hear, there's nothing wrong with
All
our
right.
hearing any one of
Okay,
us.
so what he's doing is pleading his case. Randall handled that exactly the way he should have handled it.
He did not allow the video case with lady. It was wrong.
What do you mean? How was I supposed to have a video with
A
a...
video conversation with
How?
her. How? I do not know. Skype, Zoom, anything. You're an intelligent person.
Okay, I don't have an account. Chris's employer is allowing us
Okay,
to have an account.
create your account if you
It
or
costs
do
money.
something.
That's the board.
Okay, do free on Skype. It's free.
The thing is though, the woman I gave her plenty of options to have a meeting. They're not going to move in till October. Okay, October. I gave her plenty of options. She didn't like it. She hung up on me. I told her she can come sit, we have picnic tables at the office. We can sit 6 feet apart if that's what she was concerned about. Outside, right? She
Okay.
didn't like it, so she hung up. So that was her, so she complained to him because she wanted to get out of it. She didn't want to do it. So that's how he came across
See,
with
there's
his
a lot of things that
procedure.
transpire in Natalia that I know about, Randall knows about. It's not necessary for you to know about until there's a problem.
No, but situation. What he say? Keep record keeping. This is what it's
He's
not. Do you think it's
but
not
again,
right?
He's talking about the $1,000 security deposit that GRS or CAMS or
Understand.
whatever he gave it did not put it in the right account. So therefore, when we have a ledger of security deposits, right, it wasn't there. So I had to tell him, I don't see it. And he goes, oh, I did that. So he provided
But
proof.
we
So
did-
then I went to the accountant, and then we found it that they deposited it, not even in our security deposit account with BB&T, in another account. And then, so that's what he's talking about.
But it's nothing wrong. Just understand that we need to keep records from now on.
Of
Okay,
course.
you know.
Why would we-
Another
why-
background
I'll
checks.
leave that letter to-
Background checks.
No,
What
but-
he say? Background checks.
Yes.
Okay. What about background check?
Natalia.
Why we do double background checks?
We're
Natalia,
not doing double ground check.
This
background
is
check.
why-
Double background
this
checks.
is why we voted to go self-managed, because we were getting very poor service from GRS.
But
They
I
did a lot of
answer on
things
his
wrong.
letter. I talk about what his
No,
letter says.
Natalia, if I could jump in, I
Yeah.
understand your point, but I also know what Randall did and what Larry is saying. There needs to be more communication, and I think
It's not
that.
even communication,
Well, no,
there's a
excuse me,
procedure in place.
when members of the board who know little to nothing about how this was handled, read this gentleman's letter, it does lead to questions and
Yeah,
concerns.
it's important.
And that's
Well,
Natalia's
I don't know
point.
how you folks didn't know about it when he was on the phone in our last meeting complaining about these very same things.
Because he
Yes,
sent
because
letter
nobody
to
could write it
everybody.
down fast enough, nor,
Oh,
it was
Mary Lou.
recorded, it was
Listen,
recorded.
this guy wants to rewrite our rules,
Oh,
and it's
Absolutely
not
not.
going to happen.
Absolutely not. He does not record. He just.
He's number one, Natalia.
you must be humans, okay?
If he does
we
it-
must treat people right, not
Listen.
with prejudice.
Our
What is
rules,
it?
our rules clearly state he has an interview with our property manager. It doesn't say by phone or by Skype or by anything else. He explains things to them and then they have to sign it.
Okay.
If he explains it and then they don't sign it, it means nothing.
You mean you did not read the letter?
Can I make a motion here? Can I make a motion that we table this?
We're not tabling anything. It's going to be resolved.
Well, yeah, but you know,
First of all, we're not letting the landlords dictate our rules and regulations. We as a board put them into effect. They're in effect, and that's the way it
He
is.
is homeowner. He does not tell that we must change the rules. He is suggesting because
He's
it's
changing
not right
them.
what we have it treating
Natalia,
our
he wants to
homeowners.
change them for his benefit.
Okay, we never win with you, Larry.
I
All
don't,
right, so the
I don't
rules
have
are in
any notes
effect.
on it in my.
We're not, it's not up for vote whether, that we're gonna change these rules
He's
to
not
accommodate
asking to
one
change the
complaint.
rule. He wants
All right,
to
so-
remove bureaucracy. It's
May
pure
I just
bureaucracy.
say
Go ahead,
something?
Mary.
When you and Randall work on something, you as the president, when it's resolved or you believe it's resolved, would you be kind enough to just email your other board members and
I'll have
and
Randall take,
can do it?
Randall
Or
can
put
email
it in
you.
his manager's notes, put it in the
Put
manager's
that in your
report.
notes,
I
email
think
the
if
board
it's-
the resolution.
We're a
for
team, we're supposed to be a team.
I understand we're a team,
And so we're
Mary Lou,
sitting
but we
here-
already voted as a team.
That's right.
For the
Right.
rules that are in effect.
No, I'm not
We're
talking
arguing
about that.
history.
I'm talking about this gentleman at the close of the last meeting had a lot to say over the phone. It was very difficult to absorb it all, understand it all. And once you two guys got it, you believe resolved, just tell us all. Shoot us an email, Randall, and just say, or put it in the manager's report.
Now, I'm gonna give you
Well,
another
they do.
very good
I
example
included
of
that
how.
letter.
Well, I haven't read the
I'm
manager's
gonna give you
report.
another good example of how these landlords cost us money.
Okay.
Unit, there's nobody here but the board members, Unit 6805 got an estoppel of what they owed us to settle up. They disputed it. So when they dispute it, then we have to have Ross's office do an audit and go through it, which costs us money, but then we pass it on to them. We're paying for it, but it gets passed on to them to show him that we were right in that over $9,000 that he owes us. And this is what these people were doing. They're running
But he
these
not owe
bills.
us anything, this
Natalia,
guy
I'm
we're
speaking.
talking about.
They're running these bills up, $8, $9, $10, $11, $12, $15,000. And then they dispute it, and then we have to do an audit to make sure that we're right. And that costs us money, but we pass it on to them.
But we don't talk about that case if somebody
Please
owes.
refer.
Different case, you did not read the letter.
I read it, and I was firsthand involved with Randall every step of the way. And I'm the guy who said, Randall went above and beyond. He offered her any time she wanted to come in between now and November to have the interview. She didn't have to do it right away. She had 6 months to come in for the interview. She wanted out of this lease, is what it boils down to. And now he's trying to put it on us. We gave him her the opportunity to come in at once, anytime between now and November. For a personal interview, he offered her every possible way to accommodate her. She got ticked and hung up on it. She didn't want to have the interview. Now, I'm no psychologist, but I know people well enough. When you give them that many opportunities, I work with people every day, and I take away all their reasons not to buy, and when they still don't buy, I knew they didn't want to in the first place. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, I don't have your manager's report. I wasn't able to print it out.
Well,
so
I'm just telling
I
you,
did read
and
it.
Randall, in the future, just let the boards, copy the board when you send me something, copy the board.
Well,
So everybody knows, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I'm concerned, this letter, did anybody else on the board see this letter?
They probably
Yes,
do.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
no, who read
it
it?
was-
Manager's report.
Yes, yeah, and
Last
Natalia
one.
forwarded it to me, I know, this week to review it again, to read it again.
I've read through the letter. I think there's 3 things that we could take away from the letter. The first thing is that I think it would help greatly if, as an HOA, we simply documented the process that an interviewer has to go through. One of the things that's very clear from having talked to him and from having read the letter is that there was an unclear expectation as to the order in which events would proceed. And I think simply by documenting it, which would take us 5, I realize that, but if we just put it in the HOA with a list that says these are the steps that an applicant goes through, as long as it's there,
It's
I
on the
think,
application.
I know, but I think if we just put it there, I think it would solve a lot of the problems.
If it is there, why do we put it there again?
Yeah, it's
would-
there.
It's redundant.
I would still put it there.
It's part of our
The
documents we
applications
give
are
them.
online.
No, but
They're
is
actually
it online in our HOA
They're on
website?
the general ledger.com.
GeneralLedger.com, it's in there?
Everything is
Okay.
posted.
The
Well, I'm
second-
just saying, I
no
didn't look for
secret.
it, so I don't know
The second,
whether
the,
it's
sec-
there.
the second thing is when we got the letter from the homeowner, and it boils down to communication, it just would have been good to know who was responding to him and when they were going to get a
Well,
response.
Randall was
Yeah.
responding.
Okay. The thing is, the only thing is, I just say, I did not know who was going to respond to him. And I
Randall-
Randall is
Property
responsible
man.
for that. That's his job.
Okay, it was unclear to me that that was the case. It would just be good to know.
Well,
Again,
it
it's
said
not a
on his
criticism.
letter, the reason why I included it is
Right.
because he wanted all the board members to
Right.
see it. Because he composed the letter after the last meeting,
Right.
the Zoom meeting.
Right.
So I, first, I was gonna just respond, but because, it was a long letter, and it said that he wanted the board members all to see it. So that's why I never told him what, we're gonna say to him, that we're not changing anything. So I included that letter so you guys can read it. This way, he can't come back at me saying I didn't do what he asked me to do.
Right.
Which was to give the board this letter. So I did that. Now that's why you guys are discussing it, and then
Again,
I'm
I
gonna
don't.
respond to it.
Again, I don't really care about what the argument. I'm just saying, moving forward, when we get letters like this, it would just be good to know who is going to respond and when, just so that everyone's on the same page.
Oh, well-
so that we also don't have an example of
Well,
one of us.
before you came on the board officially, before you came on, when we appointed Randall as our manager,
Right.
the duties of doing this was defined at that time. And
Okay.
he would be responsible for the step of the interview and handling all of the details, and that packet would be made available through him,
Okay.
which it is. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, can I ask you a question, because I haven't seen this letter? Is this
Right.
guy an owner or a renter?
He's an owner.
Who's renting his place.
He's
Yeah.
an owner.
He rents his unit.
Yeah, but another thing, what he was talking about, that we force them to do background check to
No,
them,
the background
do
check-
background checks.
No, the background
They,
check is
wait, I'm not finished, please.
Right.
He doing background check on his people. After he come, and we doing a background check, and they signing all applications, all original, everything. And after appear that finally these people, when they spent all this money, it's bank not approve this person. This is why all this work, all this money wasted. Why he tell that final? That first we have background check. We charge expensive for that background check, and one background check is enough. And all these documents must be finalized when the person approved.
First of all, Natalia, in our rules and regulations, it
It's very bad
states
that you don't
that
read.
they-
You can't, wait a minute, excuse me, Larry, I want to address.
I'm answering her question, and then
You
can
don't need
talk.
fight me.
Thank you.
We have rules and regulations that state we do a background check. If they elect to do it on their own, that's up to
They
them.
don't
We don't
elect it.
accept their
We
background
ask
check.
them. What he write that we force him to do that.
No.
No, we
Of course,
didn't.
it's
He
part of-
wrote
He
in
read
his
it wrong,
letter.
then he read our rules wrong.
No. He's
You don't accept somebody else's background check when
Right.
we have the
We have the
responsibility
I know that we
to
do.
do it. So anything he does
I talk
doesn't
about
matter to
bureaucracy.
us.
He writing.
I
If
talked
you
to
read,
him.
if you have memory,
I
didn't
he
force
wrote that force him 2 times. It's he
Here's
took it out.
here's what,
Did you
here's,
see?
yeah, I read the letter. I also talked to him.
I know what his
What
problem
happened was is
I know
as
this problem,
as
because
a
he
rent
wants to change the rules.
Oh
to
my
suit
God.
him.
as a renter, as the person renting the property, he asked that person to go through a background check because he wasn't sure which one they were going to rent. That's standard. Every rental company, if you go to them and you ask them, they're going to do that. Separately, the HOA does their own background check. The HOA he wasn't saying the HOA was imposing it. What his point was is that as the person renting the unit, it would be more expedient for him to simply have the HOA define an approved list of vendors, so that way when he does his standard background check, which is completely separate from our HOA, that it would count for both. And the reason that we would not want to do that is it opens up a legal liability
Right.
in that he would be paying for a background check that we're not paying for as an associate. It opens us up to liability. I understand what he was saying in terms of trying to minimize the 2 background checks, but we never imposed on him the other background check. He voluntarily decided to do it
Okay.
to reduce his risk. That has nothing to do with it.
Misunderstood.
All right.
Okay, can we move
then-
on?
All right, go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm through. That point is
Okay.
taken.
Now, Chris
So-
explained it well.
We do it, and we're covered, and this is the way it has to be done. It's no secret. I believe all the realtors now are seeing the way it's done, because the realtors used to do the background checks.
Right.
What? Do you think they may have an ulterior motive to make sure it's okay? We do our own, period.
Right.
Yeah, but I agree with that. We must do that.
Okay, all right, so.
So remove the
The other
bureaucracy.
thing is, getting back to the rentals and the landlords, we have 3 units right now that are going, that I signed off on to go into lien foreclosure. They owe us money, some in 15,000, 17,000. These are your landlords and the renters who collect the rent, don't pay us, and then let us foreclose on it. The other thing that I had Rawson do is that if, and Randall's checking, units that are rented and they're behind on their assessments, we have the full legal rent to force them to pay their rent to the association until their assessments are current or we deem necessary.
Or we can evict them.
Or if they don't do that, they can be evicted.
We have the right to evict.
Right.
No, understand, but can we ask them to pay us? Can we do
Sure.
that? Or-
Sure, but you know, if they get up to the point where they owe $2,900 or something, and they're just basically telling us to go swim.
Yeah,
we have to
unlike some
act
other
on it.
people, I've been working with this for 4 years, seeing how these people are taking advantage of us, costing us money. So don't ever look for me to have a soft spot in my heart for landlords and renters.
Yeah.
So that's why we passed all these rules and regulations, had our documents rewritten to protect us against them selling and not paying us back assessments. It costs us money to get all that done. Last year, it's done, and we're going to use it. Okay, so.
Can I make a suggestion here at this point? Because
Yes.
I don't know if we're going to get to this, but it's just a fast one. On the aging of accounts, okay? It would be helpful if we could get the accounting firm to flag these units, which are rentals.
Well, that's what I'm doing.
Randall already's taken care of that.
Okay, but when the report
I asked
comes
him to
out,
get
it
that
would be
done.
helpful to us as a board to know which
ones are renters.
which one are rentals and which are not.
She can do that.
Yeah,
She can-
because
She can do that.
It could
strange.
be another column.
Well, not to anybody's surprise, but there's a lot of units in here being rented that they don't even go through us.
It could be right underneath the unit
So-
number, or right alongside it. It could have an O for owner or an R for renter or
Yeah,
something.
so I've asked Randall to
Could
get a
be right
list of
after
all
the
the
unit
renters.
number. I know
and
how
to
it's
know
done.
everybody who's behind
Yeah,
on
good idea.
assessments. And then, again, we have to have a legal letter sent, letting them know they either pay, the renter pays the monthly lease amount to the association or to Rawson and Burr's office, or we evict them.
But why we pay $205 to Rosin for just one letter?
They pay for
They
it.
pay for that, though.
It's
It's
charged,
passed through to them.
No, I
but
understand,
it's
but
added on to the account that they...
but if they don't pay, we never get money back.
Oh, they'll pay. They've been paying.
Okay.
So, don't worry.
Gina,
I got one right now for over $9,000 that's going to be paying shortly. Or Rawson does. I'll give him the credit.
But another
I've been hound-dogging.
question. I wrote you several times why we did not ask there's a government grant or loan for homeowner association because we're
All right.
non-profit.
I did ask Jeannie to do that. I'm sorry, I should have let you know that I had already done that. Jeannie was looking into that. We don't qualify because last year we had a property management company. They were in charge of the employees, so we have no employees.
We have employees, 2 employees.
No, we don't.
Randall.
Now we have Randall and Ed.
Right.
Yeah.
But last year, they were on.
Yeah, we had no
David,
employee.
And Edva was on
GRS.
GRS's employment
Right.
roster.
The
Yeah.
law requires you have to have an
So
employee.
that's why we don't
You have
qualify.
to have an employee to be
No, but
eligible.
this year, if it means we need 2 years have employees,
Yes,
right? Or
correct.
No,
You have to have a previous
Yeah,
employee.
This
but
would be
that's-
the first year.
That's why I did that, to see if we would qualify, and I apologize, my fault, but I've been dealing with a lot, and now I'm back at work, so
So if you're 2 years, so if next year we have 2 employees, and this thing is still being, or they're
we
gonna
can,
postpone
we
it or
can
make
put
it
in for
retroactive,
federal.
or...
Right.
Yeah,
As a
because
small
I got it from my
nonprofit
non-profit, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
And
I
maybe
got it.
to further note on this, tomorrow the Palm Beach County is dispersing their startup grants as well, which are $25,000 apiece.
Right, for small
Right.
business,
We are not
12 or less employees.
Right. You can have
I
more.
think.
You can have more than 50. There's 2 different pools.
Oh,
We're not
my boss
eligible.
said there's
Right,
one
there's
that's
2
12
different ones.
12 or
Right.
less or
Yeah.
something,
We're
yeah.
not eligible on the basis that we're a nonprofit.
Yeah, no. No.
Okay, but at any rate,
Company I
there's a
work
lot
for
goes
is-
on in here on a day-to-day basis that Randall and I are very well aware of, and if in the future, anything that requires the board to know, and I have no problem with just adding their names to the email that you send me.
Well, and that's a good idea, because then when we get the agenda, or we get the manager's report, both of them, there are things that we know nothing about, and that would be,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think that
we
needs
have
to be
to work,
corrected.
yeah,
I think
not-
that,
But just
Not
keep
just-
in mind, I don't have a problem doing that, but an email, one simple email generates 25 emails. and
Yeah,
that's
what you
something
have
I
to
can't
do is look at it for
Look at it.
information
well, just put in your
only.
manager's report, and then we don't have to
Well, I do,
email
I
you.
mean, the manager's
Well,
report-
not everything. We knew nothing about, having Jeannie.
just said we will not answer you.
Yeah,
The
that's
3
the only,
units
that's
going
the
into
only thing I
foreclosure.
ask, because
Well-
I don't have a bit of problem in the world with transparency. But I don't want emails coming for Randall to generate 15 more emails, because he doesn't have time for it. Quite honestly, he's kept very busy. I know what his schedule is, I know what he does,
Yeah, we're lucky.
so. Okay, Chris, I'm gonna turn it over to Chris for his treasurer's report.
All right.
He has some very enlightening news that, let's hope it works out for us.
We have lots of enlightening news. All right, so I'm going to assume that everyone has had some time to look at the numbers that Jeannie sent over for April. So I'll give kind of a quick summary of kind of the important items in that, and then I'll talk about some potential solutions to some of the problems that we are having. So the first, obviously, is as of today, we are on track to be $200,000 to $300,000 as an HOA over budget for the year. That assumes that we don't undertake any new capital operations for the rest of the year. So that means no cutting of hedges, no concrete, no power washing, nothing, even if they have a established operating budget. The reason for that, it comes down to basically three parts. The first is budget-imposed self-restraint. Over the years, the HOA has done this model for assessments where we try to keep them artificially low to try to make them affordable. And unfortunately with that, that's catching up to us in the sense that in order to do that, we've copied over a lot of line items over many years that just don't make a lot of sense. So an example of this is building repair and maintenance. Okay, 2018, we budgeted $15,000. We ended up the year with $61,000, so $45,000 over budget. 2019, we budgeted $15,000 again. We ended up with $60,000, $45,000 over budget again. And then for 2020, we have a $15,000 budget. We are currently at $50,000 in April. Because bear in mind, all of the reports are ending April the 20th. We're going to spend probably $100,000 at the current rates. Now, some of these we can kind of eat by moving some of these expenses from operating out of reserves, right? And I'll have a whole separate item list at the end with actions that we can vote on as a board to move some of these items, because I've spent the last 48 hours talking to Jeannie, probably to the point where I'm probably her entire email inbox at this point. So that
Shot me an email.
yeah, so that's the problem. The budgets really haven't been updated to reflect kind of obvious repeat year overages, and in a good year we can kind of eat those, because with accrual-based accounting, it always assumes that all the income is going to come in regardless of when it actually does, and the bills are going to be paid regardless of when they're actually paid. And so we're able to sometimes generate cushions from operating accounts that don't get used. Maybe projects are delayed, whether on purpose or because they just don't have time to do it or something. But in bad years like this year, where we're having impairments on assessments, we don't have the cushion that we have to kind of cover this stuff. And eventually this money is going to have to come from somewhere. If we go through, in the fall with kind of concrete, power washing, tree pruning, etc., we're probably realistically looking at about a $400,000 shortfall. That's the start. And I've been going over these numbers for years over the last 48 hours. The second problem that we have is kind of a lack of modeling and future financial planning. A good example of this is fences. Fences is something that probably is one of the easier reserve costs to calculate. You can get an idea of what a fence will cost at 20% and adjust that amount annually over time and simply divide in order to get in a reserve amount. But as we can see from the financial statements, we're going to run out of fence reserves, and that's coming out of fence operating, which is not adjusted to handle that kind of outlay.
Are we defining our capital items properly in this?
We are. We're just, the problem is that in order to keep the assessments low, what we've done is just kind of underfunded a lot of them. So, like, I'll get a good example here in a minute. When I get to kind of Rawson, which is kind of leaning toward his thing. But part of that also is because as a board, there really isn't a plan in terms of financial outlays over the course of 3 to 5 years. And what that leads to is the HOA either overpaying for goods and services because we can't negotiate phase contracts. So for example, like concrete, where if we came up with a plan of which ways we're going to do over 3 years, we could negotiate a contract where we would pre-negotiate doing the entire project over 3 years with the vendor taking, a certain amount each year. That predictability would lead to our capital expenditures being a lot easier to predict, and it would also save us a lot of money because we could negotiate the whole project as opposed to individual aspects. It also leads to people, like for example Randall, having to do a lot more work than he should have to in terms of bidding. Because for example, things like trees, if we had the plan for 3 years, we could know exactly what we need to get bids on for those 3 years, as opposed to like every meeting having Randall run out and pick 13 or 18 trees or whatever to try to do a bid on. I'd rather like to take all the questions
go
if you
ahead,
can.
Go ahead.
So that's part of the thing.
I can't write them down so fast enough.
It's okay. There's the recording.
I don't do shorthand.
Yeah, and also because we also don't adequately budget for capital projects that we might want to. For example, power washing, right? We might want to do power washing every year, but it's not in our operating budget. And so the problem is that while our operating accounts have a lot of money in it, that account's money, a lot of it is already spoken for. It's just not withdrawn yet because those amounts that we're accrual accounting for just haven't been billed yet in the course of the given year, right? And the final reason that we have it is kind of like self-inflicted decisions. So Rawson's a great example of this. Rawson bills 2 separate accounts, and for 2 different purposes. There's like bucket 1 and bucket 2. Bucket 1 is anything that has to do with collectible accounts receivable. So that's him doing collections, that's us doing liens, bankruptcy, anything that has to deal with a way in which the association is pursuing money against an individual unit, basically, right? And the second bucket is where Rawson bills us for like what I like to call HOA advice. I'm sure there's a better term for it, but essentially whenever Larry or the board basically gets an opinion from him, right? So it's a phone call, email, etc., where they're drafting, suggestions on things like rules and regulations or talking about strategy, any of that, right? Now, bucket 1 of collection of A&R, as long as the overall amount is less than the amount that it's producing in terms of collections, it's fine from a monetary perspective, right? If we spend $10 but we're making 20, like it doesn't matter that we're spending $10. The problem comes in really bucket number 2, in advice. And the problem with this is from 2 things. Number 1, again, this goes back to lack of budgeting. We don't really budget enough based on our historical averages to how much advice we're getting from Rawson. And the second amount is really just a lot of excess, particularly this quarter, compared to years historically. So let me give you an example. This year alone, for advice, we budgeted $20,000 for the whole year. Okay? In April alone, we spent $19,347. We spent the entire annual budget in almost a month.
What took place in April?
We had a lot of, I don't know, there's a whole list of like things,
Well, the
but like,
things we
There's a
discussed
whole list,
before.
one of them being Unit 5727 that
Right.
they owed us $21,000.
that's an A&R, that's a different bucket.
Oh, that one.
That's a different bucket. No, this is, this was advice regarding, there's a list, I can pull it up later, and he itemized
It's
the list.
probably, I think I got you. It's regarding this insurance company that was handling a claim for us.
If it's regarding any unit, it's not that.
Right.
Yeah.
And they lost the case because they didn't prepare or get the information to the judge on time. That, they wanted us to pay a $10,000 deductible and pay the $21,000 back. So I had to get Rawson involved to work with this Philadelphia insurance company to get them to take the appeal.
It's right here, I have it all written down for the
Yeah.
meeting.
And
The owner filed a suit against us.
And
right?
I was able to, I thought it would be a good idea to get Jay from Hartzell Insurance, I can't remember his last name. Marcus, yeah, Jay Marcus. I thought it was a good idea to get him involved, so I asked him to get in touch with Rawson because he should be working for us as our agent. And he agreed. He says, Larry, get me the information. So I said, I got a better idea. You contact Rawson directly. He'll send it to you. Jay's going to help us. So far, he's helped us to the point where now they've agreed to take the appeal. And we should win the case because they're going to be properly, it's going to go to a different judge and it's going to be properly prepared for. We'll still have to end up paying the $10,000 deductible, but we shouldn't have to pay any more.
So just quickly
Oh,
looking
what-
through the list
I
of
was
the ones that
gonna
he
say,
billed
You
for,
didn't mention what,
there was one for...
Very good. We
Excuse me, can we have the treasurer continue?
yeah, no, I was just
So,
going to
like,
add the dollar.
so those would also be, for example, I'm just reading through what Rawson billed
There's a
for.
mass of them. Believe me,
The-
I deal with it
The one you were
every...
talking
Mary
about.
Lou,
Every day.
let the person finish,
Anyway.
okay? We're recording.
All right, so there's obviously there's a couple the things also that would be kind of included in that reading from Rawson's thing is things like, for example, when we did a cause affidavit for the shooting unit, meeting conduct one. There's one in here regarding reviewing letters for a security deposit. I assume that's basically the letter that got reviewed, that type of thing. But kind of all of that's in a bucket. Now, the problem with this is that we budgeted for the year $20,000, and we have well excess of that. We are we're almost 2.5 times that amount for the whole year at this point, and the amount is kind of accelerating. And I think what needs to be done here is kind of two things, which I'll kind of get into. I was planning to get into later. But yeah.
We had in April this 20,000 excess, okay, of activity that built this 19,000 up, whatever
Right.
the number was. Okay, are you projecting that for the rest of the year that we're going to have similar instances?
It doesn't happen every month.
It doesn't happen every month. No, no. When I said, well, for example, we'll be over about 100,000 with Rawson, I'm assuming it goes back to what it was the previous month, which the previous month was over. Bear in mind, with a $20,000 budget, we're budgeting as if we're spending $1,500 a month, right? And none of the months have we been so far this year have we been below 8,000.
Have you,
So we improperly created the budget amount.
Correct.
That's wrong.
Correct. The problem is not
You're
Rawson himself. The
budgeting.
problem is related because of the budget that's been imposed. We kind of have to deal with the consequences of that.
Who imposed it?
we
We
do,
I
agreed
mean,
to it.
we voted
guys-
for the
Well,
deal.
and we're not pointing fingers
The point-
at Randall,
the point-
we're not pointing
Right.
fingers at
The point is
Michelle.
not, and again, these numbers have not made sense. It's not like this is a new issue. This is not numbers not made sense for years. The way this has been covered is from operating expenses in the past, and from the fact that we haven't had really a major assessment impairment.
And did you look at 2019,
I
the
looked
month
all-
of April, what Rawson cost us versus this year, month of
I've
April?
looked back 3 years because I've got 3 years
And
worth of
3
data.
years, how dramatically has, just for example, the month of April?
I wouldn't be able to give you like a run rate percentage of growth year over year,
Okay.
but I can definitely
Was
prepare
it
that.
6 years ago that we had or 7 years ago that we had a $1,000 assessment?
We had an
When
assessment,
we went
When
into
the roofs
receivership.
were done, there was...
well, no, he raised our maintenance from 270 to 350.
We had an assessment
and
that we were
change.
paying.
240,
340. 270 to 340.
270 to
And
340.
6 months of $105.
I remember it was $1,000, so I'm just questioning.
No, 6 months, Randall's saying, of $105.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
$650.
It's problem mismanagement.
Yeah. And-
We
and-
have mismanaged it. We overspent money what we should not.
All right.
Well,
Well,
we
like
take
Chris was
example
saying,
lights.
we're trying,
What we talking
creating
about.
budgets to try and keep the dues down.
It's,
For 3
to
years,
be
our
honest,
we
we're only
mismanaged.
spending money on attorneys that we have to spend. So we're not spending too much, we're under budgeted.
But
Correct.
some question you can go to internet, Google, you can find the answer. Not
There-
for every little
Well, I
thing.
think
If I
it'll
can-
be interesting to
If I can get back to my,
Okay.
if I can get back to the report,
Well,
there's
then-
action items
All
here.
right, Chris
All
has
right.
the floor.
Yeah,
All right.
yes.
So obviously, there's a couple of different ways we can solve this. Obviously, the next year, obviously, for some of these items, we need to budget a lot more, and that's going to have a consequential effect on the assessment rate.
We may have to because we're in a
There's-
financial situation.
There's no
right
question
now.
we're going to have to. We
Well,
are beyond.
unless, I'm just gonna interject one thing, unless we can offset that increase with what the plans
All
are.
right,
for
let's
the-
Right.
jump ahead.
All right, let me get
Yeah,
through in
so
order
let
here.
it go.
All right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think it would be a good idea that anytime we're going to ask Rawson questions, I think we should all do it as a board together. And the reason for that is because if we can start combining some of these questions together, they can be addressed in more condensed Rawson sessions. And even if that saves us 2 to 3 hours a month at $295.
We don't go directly to Rawson.
At $295.
I know, Joe doesn't.
We never
Right.
contact, only
My
our
point.
president
My point.
contacts us.
Okay. Anyway,
Larry.
regardless of who's doing the questioning,
Oh, no, but
If
I
Larry,
also would say that it's helpful where a lot of times we have to go to him because of disputes regarding the rules and regulations.
Right.
That board members raise, and he needs a clarification.
right? I think it would be a good idea if we can try to combine this because at $295 an hour, which is what he charges us for advice,
Oh my God.
if you can save 3 hours a month, which would be huge. I mean, it's $1,000 a
$295.
month, right? All
I
right.
have a better idea. Get your questions together and I'll send them to him and he can write us the answers.
Yeah.
and he'll charge us a lot of money to do
Well, he's
that.
gonna
It's too
charge
much,
us
it's
regardless.
too much.
All right.
He doesn't work for free.
The final item that we haven't
But
discussed.
we're not so rich
Come on,
to pay such a
Please,
money.
go
The
ahead.
final item we have to discuss is water. Water has been a massive impairment to our community for years. It's been unaddressed every year, and while I don't have I can certainly get the growth numbers if you'd like. I think everybody's aware that the
It's a
water
third part.
growth goes staggeringly. And the problem with it is that water is something it's a usage, it's not something that we can adequately plan for. We can assume that it's going to go up by roughly the same linear percentage every year. There's no way for us to know that. Essentially, we have to do it as a dartboard. What would be nice is we could move water off the HOA budget books. Okay? Now, there's been many proposals over the years, and I've gone through, again, years worth of your documents and meetings that I wasn't even living here some of the times. Okay? And I've tried to go through all of the methods that have been proposed and try to reevaluate them, and then go through all of the billing myself and try to evaluate them. Okay? In my opinion, there are two separate things that we need to do. We can do them both at the same time. We can do one or the other. It doesn't matter. The first is we need to get the water off the books. Okay? Now, previously we've tried to.
What do you mean by that?
In terms of the water should be billed to the
Individual.
individual
Oh,
member
can't be.
and not. Yes.
It can.
Yes,
It
it
can.
can be, Mary Lou.
All right.
Not without water meters.
It can
This-
be.
allow
He's getting
allow
to
the
it.
multi
Let's let him
allow the
finish.
multi-week investigation.
All right, okay,
All right.
all right.
All right. Previously, we've tried to go after the city to go put in meters. The city is not going to do this. They're under no obligation to, and they have a general unwillingness to do this.
Oh,
Okay?
expensive.
So, when this was done, I also researched, Joe had a question a long time ago about them overbilling us as a commercial entity. So what I did was I went down to City Hall and I got a copy of all the bills. Now, unfortunately, I only got, because I'm not the president, I can only grab what they'll give me, and they gave me January. That's the one they gave me for. Okay? So January, I went through the bill items line by line with their little spreadsheet, and I tried to figure out what exactly was going on with the billing. The problem is not that they're billing us as a residential versus a commercial entity. They bill us actually as a residential multifamily unit, which has it's the same water rate as if you were in a house.
Right.
The problem actually comes from the fact that in a multi-unit residency, they bill based on the number of units in a given house. So if you have a house of one, it's considered a unit of one. If you have a house that has a townhouse where there's 4 to a meter, it's 4. In our case, most of these things are apparently in groups of 24. I don't know why that is. It doesn't matter to me. It's just what they're billed at. All right. So where this comes into play is that the city charges actually an amount for the storm water that comes off of the buildings, the sewer amount that goes back, and that is the problem. Because for houses, when you get a unit size that's under 16, the city does not charge. But all of the units that they give us are 16 or over. So they charge a $4 or whatever it is per cubic unit, which is 874 gallons, and I spent days with spreadsheets on this stupidity.
I know.
All right? Now, there are 2 ways you could try to solve this. You could try to have them individually meter every single house.
Yeah, it's millions of dollars.
Let me finish. That actually does not solve the problem, because if you do that, then you actually pick up more in service charges from them individually meeting, because they have a set flat service charge fee, right? Although in theory, if you could do that, you'd save about $3,000 a month. So the first thing we think we should do is we should try to go down there. I was talking to Larry about this earlier. We can try to negotiate out of the stormwater. If we can do that, it'll save us between $3,000 and $5,000 a month.
What's the negative of our going
There
out
is
of
no
that?
negative of trying.
No, I mean, but if we were successful, what is the negative about being
There isn't.
out of the stormwater?
No.
There's no negative to this.
Okay.
The downside is the
No
odds.
consequences,
The odds of
no.
it actually being successful, of them actually saying yes, is about like 0.01%, right? But we can try, and it'd be good to at least say we try, so that if somebody down the line comes up with some sort of lawsuit that we can attach ourselves to, that says this type of multi-billing discrimination is not allowed, at least we can say that previously we tried.
We could
Right.
also contact other,
I don't think it's worth pursuing
Quads,
litigation.
HOAs.
For the amount that it's
no,
worth.
I mean,
Can I hear what he's got to say?
Yeah,
Please?
no.
For the amount that it's worth, it's
Yeah,
not.
let him finish.
It's not
Okay.
worth pursuing litigation.
no,
okay.
I was going to say
The
check.
second part of this is how do we get the homeowners to actually reduce the amount of water that they use? Because that's where it also kills us. Because they use the same cubic units of water out as water in for stormwater. So if we can somehow lower the amount, it will lower our water bill substantially. So if the city can't put in the meters, I would ask why can't we put in the meters? So I looked into it because before I lived here, many of you don't realize, I lived in Gainesville, Florida, and at the University of Florida. And in Gainesville, what the association did there, although it was a condominium complex, so it wasn't really an association, but what they did there was they constructed their townhouses in a rectangle. And what they did is, when they put them in, just like yours, they were metered, although they were metered 40 units opposed to 24. They actually hired a commercial company to come in and individually meter them, right? The metering has two problems if you don't have the city doing it. The first is the cost of installation of the meters, but the more prudent part is someone actually has to go around and collect the numbers. Because if we just install meters and no one's collecting the numbers and billing them, it doesn't really matter, right? Yeah.
Just quickly, I'm going to throw this in if I may. The main problem is that every quad that we have 120 of whatever we have, every quad has only one main water line coming to that quad. In order for us to individual meter and for that to be read, each from that main line would have to be a line coming into each of
There's
the
the outside.
quads.
There's
Very
the-
good. You already
Every
repeated this
unit-
so many times.
No,
Every
no.
unit has its own water line.
Yes,
No,
but
it's
that
okay.
is-
Let him
that's-
finish. You already told so many times.
Well,
very
no,
good.
well, because I served on the board
No,
when
you
we went
already
out for the
repeated 10
bids.
times. We
went,
all
well,
heard
he
that.
wasn't on the board.
Please.
Can I
Leslie.
raise a point here? Chris, you talked about getting the meters. The
Yeah.
state of Florida has a program that they'll provide electronic meters.
Right. The problem is the meters. The meter
Right.
cost is nothing.
Yeah, and
The
but
meter-
What is
please,
the
what I would
problem?
like to do is let Chris finish.
Finish.
And
Well,
see
everyone
if
else
there's
has
a question.
spoken.
No,
I'm
but if
sorry.
there's a question,
I raised my
write
hand.
it down, and then at the end, you can
Don't
ask.
interrupt him.
I raised my
All right,
hand
go
to
ahead.
Okay, do not
acknowledge this.
interrupt him because
So
we're recording.
The meter cost is nothing, right? The meters are one time. They're relatively cheap. Sure, they cost you $100 or $150 or whatever they cost. It doesn't matter. What kills you in the long term is the recurring billing of actually figuring out how to do, number one, the actual reading of the meters and billing, and number two, the actual transmission of those, right? So what I did was I went through a bunch of different sites. They're all called I have it written down. I told Valerian that having said sub-metering. They're all sub-metering companies, right? And so what they would do is they would go outside to the outside shutoff, and they would install a smart water meter there, right? Now, the way that these things work, in order for them to be read, because they're not going to send a person to manually read them, that would be ridiculously expensive. You can do that, but it's too expensive. The way that these things work is they beam through they beam on a Wi-Fi basis to a cellular base, and the cellular base sends your readings to the internet. And that's what actually goes into the actual accounting that bills them separately, right? So, they will come in. They generally can offer either self-installation or package, where they come in and provide the electrician and the plumber. They go in, they'll put them all in. They'll put in the base systems to send all of the numbers up into the cloud. And they provide the software for actually doing the billing, right? The only thing that wouldn't be included in a full service plan is us figuring out a way of providing power to their main cellular base point, not to the individual units. Individual units, they put in batteries, they last 10 years or whatever it is, and then they replace them.
What are we talking about?
All right, so that's where I got into this. So, in order to get individual quotes, I didn't know I had the authority to do that, right? So I didn't do that. Instead, what I did was I went through literally probably 100 of them until I found one that was dumb enough to put all their prices on their website, okay? And they're a company that's a national company. They would come and fly their people in for 3 weeks is what they think it takes, and then they would install it. Okay, for 500 units, which is the closest number on their little table, costs about $150,000, which sounds like a lot. But if we divide it by the number of units that are here, it's really not that a lot. The only thing in their package that it doesn't include, again, is the electrician cost of installing the power to their cellular base points. Now, on top of that, you're going to anticipate to pay some sort of ongoing fee, whether that's passed on to the consumer or eaten by our homeowner or eaten by our homeowner association of the actual software involved in running it, right? Someone's going to have to pick up the tab for that and the billing access of that.
What is that?
That's not on their website, and that's something where we can negotiate. But what I think is worth pursuing is having a couple of them come out here and do a bid, because hypothetically, if we can do this, it moves all of the water to the individual homeowners. Now, having looked at many, many options, including this one, for a long, long time, there are a lot of studies that indicate that submetering, as opposed to other methods like RUAs or other ones, is by far the most effective. The reason for this is because the direct cost of what they use is passed directly to the homeowner. And as a result, what tends to happen is after homeowner associations put in submetering, the water usage of the association as a whole tends to drop 15 to 30%.
Yeah.
Right? Now, to be clear, the way that this would work from a financial perspective, because we're the ones putting it in and not the city, is the city would still bill us for the water. And then we would recoup the amount of the water billing from their individual billing. So in the end, we're still paying for water, but we'd be paying for a far reduced, in theory, amount of water. And people would actually have to
That
pay.
should also help
All right, that part I
Sewer.
don't understand.
Yeah.
How do we get to a reduced amount of cost?
Right.
Because what happens is people, when people start realizing the amount they're spending
They're
on
gonna
water,
save.
they're going to use less. As they use less, it bumps us down on the rates. If we can get in the CUs down, each rate for stormwater is a different cost. So if we can get them to go down on an individual unit, it saves us money over time by moving us into higher and better rates. The other thing it does is, it does actually two other things from an accounting perspective. The first is it moves water, for the most part, off of our books. We would be responsible as the HOA for the cost, probably, of providing the software and of the difference in any sort of leaks between the main and the individual meters, right? But the other thing it does is it allows us to find water leaks a lot easier than what we did currently. So one of the things I also did is, having gone through all of these water bills, is I went through each water bill and assumed, to start with, that every unit building, because there are 24 of them, in theory they should average out to the same amount of water, does not use anywhere near the same amount of water. This is where, again, having Jeannie's providing of the newer bills would be really helpful. But I'll give you an example. There's a submeter, there's a unit, so the 5644, so 56-way 44, the unit for that one, their water,
Which one?
5644.
I thought it was yours, right?
No, there's some.
The meter for that one is way, way above the normal. That particular sub-branch uses almost 2.1 times the amount of water as the average. It's got to be a leak. I mean, it's way above everyone else. There are some that also use a lot more. This is one of the nice things about submetering, is that we would also know immediately when there's a leak, because it's the difference in numbers between the cities. It would let us know exactly who the leak is. We'd also know exactly who's responsible for leaks. I think it would generally be a good idea to do. I think if we can reduce their costs and have them pay for it, I think it's a great thing to do.
It's better than
And it makes
increase in our maintenance.
Right, and it makes people directly responsible for the water. When they're paying for their own water, they're going to use less.
And if they have a leaky toilet or a spigot that's been dripping for 3 years, they're going to get it fixed.
Right, and it incentivizes certain people too as well. So the people who use pools and then just dump all the water out, it incentivizes them to stop doing that, because now they're going to actually have to pay for it.
Well, and you have where there's one person living in a unit, where there's two,
Right.
up
And
to
then you have
5.
some of these units that have 5 and 6 people living in them.
Yeah, which of course, our documents say 4 adults.
Great report.
4
Right.
adults, yeah.
Finally.
And you have people that I know personally that
Yeah.
clean their patio every day with a hose for an hour. That water's running.
Oh
In,
my
in
God.
any case, I think it would be worth having a couple of them come out and at least give us bids. We don't necessarily have to go through it with right away.
Right.
We can get them out here and do bids. From what I understand, the lead time of this is they come out, they do their, it's an on-the-ground assessment because they have to do, wireless testing and everything. But from the moment, if we were to decide as a board to go through with it, from that moment forward to when it would actually be implemented is generally 3 weeks.
Do we do the billing then to the individual?
The management company, it depends on, you can pick who does it. The management, but the person who does the thing generally does the billing.
The accountant, you mean Jeannie Smith?
No,
No.
this would be a different billing, separate from PHOA.
Now,
Oh.
if you get somebody that's not paying their water bill, will
Yeah.
they shut them off?
If we're allowed to do that, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. We have the ability to.
That's a tough issue to do.
Yeah, we could, I mean, that's not a problem
Yeah,
legally.
I don't
I'm just
know if
saying
it's-
that You
yeah.
have to give them so many days' notice and all this.
Right. So,
Well, I would say this too, if I may, that at some point, and Randall's pretty savvy, but Buckeye has been our plumbing company for decades, and maybe someone ought to talk with them about the underground part of the water.
right.
They don't know it.
Oh, they do, they repair them all the time.
They do not know the layout of our plumbing.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
And the final thing I wanted to mention is, and Larry had brought this up earlier, so from my understanding, washing cars is not allowed in our HOA rules.
Correct.
That's correct. Okay.
Well, let's say this.
Individual car.
It doesn't say in the documents we can do it, therefore you have to assume that it's not allowed.
All right.
Our documents state you can change a battery.
So
charge
the
a
point is we
battery.
don't want them to do it.
Right.
All right.
But we need to
So-
change our rules about
So
that.
I was talking about
So Larry,
locking the spigots.
Larry had the idea of locking spigots. It's a good idea.
Which
thing that-
spigots? Inside?
The ones on the
Outdoors,
outside of the
outside.
building.
Oh, everyone I know uses the one on the inside if their car's parked like mine is.
Well, that's okay, because if it's self-metering,
This is the
Yeah.
thing.
they
This
will
is
be paying
the
for
brilliant
that.
part of it.
Right.
If they use the one on the inside, now it's behind a meter, they have to pay for it. Then what we do, even though it will be a little bit more expensive on the unit cost of buying the actual locks, we buy the actual locks through the sub-metering company. And the reason you do this is the sub-metering company has a financial incentive to make sure that the water is metered. As a result, they're going to be very incentivized to come out here and make sure that the locks are locked versus us having to go do it. Now, in theory, could you argue that, maybe, for the amount of water usage is not, I still think it'd be worth
It's
doing.
insignificant that if you're using it just to wash,
In theory,
yeah.
I still think it would be good at least to have them tell us that in their,
Okay.
in
But
their
if the
thing.
meter is, if they're metered, it's gonna be where that valve is, where you're talking about
The
locking
shut-off.
for the
Yeah.
shut-off.
The
We
shut-off.
will decide
Well,
where,
then-
yeah.
That's right.
That's their unit, it
That's
doesn't
the
matter if
brick
they're
wall.
using
Yeah,
the
if you
water
shut that
there,
off, my
whether-
shed
whether they're using it
doesn't
there
have
or
any
inside the
water.
shed, right? What's the difference?
I-
It's still their water.
Right.
Every
why would-
bill,
well, I'm
every
saying, so
quad
wouldn't be
has
the point of
4
locking, I
outside
guess.
spigots.
Okay, my understanding is the spigots outside were not part of that loop.
Oh,
I
no,
didn't-
no.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I don't know.
Well, they're
Again, I'm not a plumber.
Part of the houses.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why I said talk to Buckeye. They
That
can
spigot
use
All right.
is dry.
Now,
All right.
the outside
Correct.
spigots are not on, there's not 4 in every building.
Right.
There's
There's
some,
two.
everybody that has a shed has a hose
No,
group in their
even
shed.
before the shed was there, there's
Yeah.
a spigot there.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
but
so
not on
that's theirs. Once it goes through that shut-off valve in the meter and comes out at
The
the
brick
shed,
wall, by the brick wall.
they're paying for it.
All right.
That doesn't
Not
come
the
from
one
a separate
outside.
outside
Yeah,
line.
it's great.
We are in agreement here. I'm
All right.
simply saying
Yeah.
that when Devonsta built these houses,
Right.
every unit outside the building by your kitchen, I guess wherever it would be, has a spigot coming
Okay.
out.
Right.
And that's the house water. If
Right.
I shut the valve off outside, there's no more water in that spigot.
In the
Right.
house, in the whole, and
All right.
everything.
Yeah, and-
All right, so moving on. I think it's something that we should look into.
Yeah, can we make decision right now? Invite them already, do something? Don't
If you
just-
wanna-
You know what?
The
Well, I was gonna
expectation,
say,
the thing
we
that I'm
have so much
concerned
going
about,
on right
if I
now.
may, just to address this situation, in
Maybe
terms of
put it on.
savings. You're predicating savings on the unit owner being responsible for shutting his water off or not fixing leaking
Correct.
valves are in a place. But you're predicating the savings on that he's going to be aware of this now. since he's paying for it.
Correct.
And he's going to cut back.
Correct.
Okay? That's an assumption.
If they don't, then they have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Understand.
And even if it's rented,
But what,
the landlord's
let me
gonna know
finish my
that they're
point.
using a lot of water.
You're telling me that West Palm Beach is still billing us
Correct.
at the consumption rate that
Correct.
we have in total.
Correct.
So we're still at that high commercial level.
Right.
How do we get out of that high commercial
We
level?
can't, because there's
Wait,
the quads.
The CUs themselves are billed in multiple levels. There's 12 levels, right? It's not actually as big of a jump as you may think it is to move up a level or two. I think we can realistically look, and again, this is where when they come out, they can give us estimates on what they believe is realistic. But I think based on the table that's provided and how their cubic unit of water is done, I think it's reasonable to assume that we can move down 1 or 2 out of the 12 levels. And that would provide a substantial savings.
Do you know how much we're talking about?
I can get you a number.
So
Not
we
a,
need that to offset the 150 grand.
right. Even if we don't, however, fully offset it right away, although most of the sub-metering companies will give you an estimate that it generally takes 12. It generally, from an industry average, takes for a unit size of this size would take 12 to 18 months for it to be thing, which is overall nothing. I mean, compared to capital projects that we do. I think one of the other benefits, though, is again moving the water up, because if the water continues to increase at the current amount of rates, your assessment next year, people are going to start realizing these assessments are going to have to go up a lot faster than they are right now.
We're going to need a general vote of the homeowners for
Oh,
providing this.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay? Trying to do this. 'cause
I'm
this is
not so sure about that.
You're
Joe.
going to have
Yeah,
changes?
yeah.
We're making changes to our bylaws.
Yes.
We're going to no longer be collecting water, which is already part of that,
Right.
our rules and regulations. So you're going to have to make changes. So these changes are going to have to
You
go
can't
to them
change the
for a
bylaw
vote.
without
It's
the
not a
vote.
general board decision.
I think
I still think we don't, but I'll find out.
if
May
we
I-
don't, look,
may I
if we don't,
suggest that we-
it's good. If we do, however, have to go to a general vote, the advantage is going to be, and the basis that I think you can get the majority of the people to vote is that you're not paying for everyone else's water, right? The majority of the people, I would like to believe the majority of the people in our community are good people, and as a result, they're going to use a reasonable amount of water. I mean, we can clearly see that there's significant deviations between some of these meters and how much water they use. I think if you can go to them, what the sub-metering companies will do when they come in here, they'll go through it, they'll give us a cost. As part of that, they also go through what the expectation is for capacity drop. And I think if you walk to them and you say, look, on average, if you're going to pay 20% less, because the association, you're not covering the 13 to 35% that of everybody else. If you're going to save 20%, I think they'll be fine to do it. Because if I can come to you and say, Joe, you're not the one, washing the Lamborghinis all the time.
20% is fine. I'm happy
absolutely.
with that. I mean,
Right.
I just want to know that when we look at what we're going to realize,
Correct.
that we're not basing it on projections of what the homeowner
Correct.
is going to save us.
Right.
Because that's an assumption that I
Right.
don't think we should be making.
No, that's
I still
fine.
don't understand the billing.
No, and may I just jump in and say one thing? I would suggest that we reach out to the board of directors, the president of the board of Sandalwood Lakes North. They are the same, built the same time, same era, same quads, everything the same. See if if either of those communities are being staggered with high water usage. Have theirs gone up at the same rate as ours have gone up over the last 3 years? And have they addressed this subject? I think like Rita Scott, people like that either the property manager or the president of that association. Let's get 2 other opinions.
But who will contact? Okay, maybe you will contact them.
I think
No,
I think the prudent thing to do, though,
Would be Randall.
would be to have a couple of them come through and let's get an idea
Yeah.
of what it'll cost.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't. None of the rest of it matters. If they come back to us and says it's going to cost us $10 million, it doesn't make a
The
difference.
reason I was
We'll all
suggesting.
sit here and waste time. I would rather let the contractors come in here and say, look, this is what it's going to cost you. This is what you're going to expect in savings. This is how long it'll take to implement all the things. And then from there, we can go to all of the other, and make an.
When I went there and was talking to them, and I asked them, you're billing us at this gross
Right.
commercial level, but you're not dividing that number, consumption number of gallons, by the 524 families that we had, so that we can see what that looks like from a unit cost basis? In other words, would it drop the consumption level to where the units, the individual units,
Yeah.
would fall down into another category similar to right next door to us here at Saratoga Point, where the people over there are spending $75, $80, $90, and some of them with pools. And I know because I looked at homes in that
Right.
area. I know what they're paying. Even in Saratoga Bay, they're not paying that kind of number.
But they don't
for water.
have.
Again, we can go to them and we can again. That's why I said there's two separate things here, and they both can be
I
done.
agree.
They
I
don't
was
have
I
gonna
don't think there's any harm in
They know
pursuing
meters.
both.
All right, I was going to suggest that you go,
Do they have meters?
you
or
talk to
At
the,
Saratoga
may I
Point,
just want to, I was going to suggest first you go to the two other DeVoster townhouses on Village. Talk to them before you go for bids, because they may have already gone out over the last 2 or 3 years to 3 or 4 companies that you're
But
considering.
they wouldn't. The bids wouldn't be relevant. Most of the
Sure, it's relevant. One is 1,000 units, so
no,
of
but
course it'd be.
the costs include many things. One of the bigger costs, part of it is cellular, because you have to actually figure out how the things and those
But I'm just
geographies are going to
curious
change.
what, they're identical to ours, all
I'm
built,
only gonna say
everything's
one thing, Mary
identical.
Lou,
They're
and
quants.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but
Yeah.
I'm saying it's probably gonna be, the answer is gonna be exactly what we've done, nothing, because even though we complain about 351, theirs is higher. And I'll guarantee you it's because of water.
I don't think ours
it
is higher
estimate
now
free?
than ours.
Yeah,
It's, but why
It
we
is?
not invite
Yeah.
them? Estimate
That's what
that's
I'm
free.
saying.
Yeah.
we don't have nothing to
Their
lose.
communities don't look anywhere near as good as
No,
ours.
well,
I
the
wish
beige
we could get
mansards
solar
were the
panels on all
secret.
these flat roofs
So,
and
Yeah.
cut our
The
lights.
beige mansards, the
Well,
brown
and our
roofs.
fences now look a lot
Yeah,
better.
no,
than-
people just driving up and down Village,
So the-
when they hear
So
where I
the city
live,
still
Yeah.
keeps a
when I'm in
meter
Bear
out
Island
at
and the
the-
women's
Cities keep
group,
their existing
and
meters.
they
And
know
they
where I
still
live, they
bill
say,
us
for
oh,
the
are you the
water.
So
ones with
basically,
pretty
basically what
beige?
you're substituting
You know,
instead
mansard
of
roofs?
us
Guys,
we're
providing
recording,
those
please.
above
Thank you,
private
that
person
And
was
work,
part of mine.
each individual unit will
They're
be
cooler
separately
than
for their
a
exact
dark
purpose.
brown roof.
Yes,
It's
oh,
gonna
and
be-
that
From
reddish.
the
I had
years
asked
of the
President of
subdivision
POA a
installed
question
on
one
each
day
individual.
regarding
They
this.
don't bill
Okay.
He's
Correct.
familiar with the different communities.
Yes,
And then
right.
that money would
And
come
the
basically
problem
as
that
a
he
giant,
pointed
like a
out to
monthly
me
check.
is a political problem in terms of West Palm Beach laws.
All right, well,
And that
They
we are
would be
rated
paying-
as
they would be
a
paying the association
cluster
each
group
individual
of
Yeah.
houses.
Yes.
And we
Correct,
fall
through
under different
a billing
categories.
company.
Village Boulevard,
Right, yeah,
yes.
through the meter.
And these are the Saratoga Point ones, okay?
And we're turning around.
And if that's the issue, then we got a political issue where we got to go to our councilmen or our elected officials and
All
start
right, but in
validating
the
I
it.
meantime,
thought that it was gonna
in the
be
meantime, to pick up on
$1,000.
Mary Lou's suggestion, I'm gonna ask Randall to go to Sandalwood Lakes North and Heritage Village
And Sandalwood
managers
Lakes.
and see if they have similar problems with water.
I
My
think-
guess is they
Of course they
do.
do.
But it'd be interesting to see if they
But-
are as
Well,
concerned
it'd be
as.
very interesting to see what Heritage is doing, because Heritage just fired GRS.
Yeah,
They just went self-managed themselves, and it'd be very
they
interesting.
did because of us.
Right, it'd
I
be very
heard.
interesting to see what their board, which is now more
They've been
into the
calling me,
numbers,
asking me
is
all kinds of
planning.
stuff.
Okay, let make some decision. This company can give us estimate about how much it costs to install all these meters. Can we invite them? It's free. It costs us nothing. Motion on the table.
Well, we can invite them, it depends on where they're coming from as to whether they're gonna
Right.
show up, so.
Right. There are a lot of these companies, a lot of them are based in Miami-Dade County, because Miami-Dade County does the exact same billing practice as West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
They're not coming from far. In fact, one of the national providers is actually right where Jog Road intersects with Okeechobee. So we can invite them. What we would do is I think we invite 6 of them. If 4 of them show up, then we get 4 quotes. I don't see
Well,
it. There's no.
6 of them's gonna, for one meeting's gonna be too many.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it as one meeting. I would
No,
do.
we break
What
it
we
down.
might do
Do it
is
over-
have 2,
3 months, yeah.
have 2 of them
Right.
at
What I
a
would-
meeting
what I
and
would
get at least a feel for where we're
Well,
at.
no. I'm not
Listen,
suggesting. I'm not suggesting
Larry,
they
we
come.
could always call for another special
They have to
meeting
come to the
Right.
meeting.
that they can
They have
come
to
to.
make
I'm
the
willing to go to
presentation
3 or
at the
4
meeting.
meetings in a month.
They
if we
can
get
walk
it-
the property
issue
with the
resolved
property
and looked
manager.
at
Right.
And
in
you,
his
if
favor.
you're the,
I think
I don't
what
wanna
Larry
wait for-
appoints you.
Can somebody,
4
one
months.
person speak because it's
Well,
recording?
we're
What
okay.
color?
I think what would be worth doing is having like 2 of them a weekend, because whether I don't know if Randall has time for it. If not, I can do it. Frankly,
No,
Make
it has to be our property manager.
Okay.
That's
Why-
what we
why
have
is
him
that?
for. you may go as a board member, but he's the main guy whenever we have people coming on property to give us estimates.
Okay.
Be it a landscape company, be it a tree company, he's our leader
if we
where
do-
that goes.
Why would it make a difference as to who's getting the quote from them?
Yeah.
Because do you do a manager's report every month? No,
No, but
he
I can
does,
write-
so
But
he
he
has to
could write a
be
report
directly.
and submit it to the manager
No.
saying, this is information that I got.
Randall, what Larry usually does, like he did with me for a couple of years, appointed me to meet with the landscape company with Randall.
Right.
And we would go over the issues, and then Randall would report the results, and I would tell
Yeah,
Larry.
I could appoint Joe, he's head
Well,
up on this water, to go with Randall.
My thought was just going to be to have a couple of them come out every weekend. We get quotes from them,
I'm
right?
not free.
Not all
I'm
of
not
those.
free
I
on the
mean, we're going to be
weekends.
realistic
I
here.
work
Not all of the
weekends.
quotes are going to be
Yeah,
realistic.
we're not
No.
free on the weekends.
So we-
He's not, I'm not,
That's
he
what I
doesn't
was-
work
Mary
weekends.
Lou, let
I was
reporting.
I was offering to do it on the weekend.
Do you know
Well,
what I
well,
do?
Yeah, but I'm
Anyway.
saying,
We can get it done.
ideally,
Okay?
Right.
ideally.
And
We'll take a
I
couple-
agree,
I don't
we
have
got a
to, but I
motion.
do.
Larry,
Motion on the table. Let's do
Okay.
something instead of just
Somebody
talking.
want to second Natalia's motion?
let's define what we're talking about in the
Thank
motion.
you, thank
okay?
you. And a weekend
We're
is,
asking, we're
necessary.
gonna, let's assume we're gonna have Chris do it, okay?
Chris, Randall, and you can do it.
Fine, we will do it,
That's- yeah,
okay? Meet
yeah.
with these people,
great.
okay? And to have them create a proposal for us, and then we can set a schedule for when they can come before us
Right.
and submit the reports.
Yeah, they
can submit.
That works for
With you
me.
three guys, the weekend doesn't matter. With me and Mary Lou, it does.
I don't give a damn, I'm home all the time, so
Right.
Well, I'm thinking ahead of time, not right now.
I'd like to not to be, but.
All right.
Okay, what
So
is
the-
decision?
All right, so
really
the
need a
motion
motion
is that we're
That's
going
what I
Just want to
to...
get a bid.
I don't think we
Want
need a
somebody to come
motion
out?
because
Well,
we
need
go
a
out for
motion.
bids,
No,
we go out for
what
bids
we're
for
gonna do-
landscapers.
What we're gonna do is I'm gonna appoint
Committee.
Chris and Joe
And
to
Randall.
work with Randall on water management.
Okay.
Yes, that's
All right,
perfect.
And we will
Okay.
report back.
Just like I
All
used to
right,
do with
so
landscaping.
record it that way, that we've formed a water management
Committee.
board or
Team.
committee.
Right, committee.
And it consists of Chris, Joe, and Randall.
Can we also do that for solar energy?
No.
Solar energy can't be done on
Right.
multifamily units.
Oh, you didn't know that?
You-
Yeah,
I mean,
can't
you
be
can
on
do it,
multifamily.
but you're gonna do it at a much higher price.
Oh, no, but
And then the
we couldn't afford
association
it.
would have to approve it, it's
Yeah.
gonna interfere with our
And
roofs.
you know the story, yes, that if a flat roof needs to be replaced, all that solar power has to be removed, taken off the roof, and we pay through the nose to have it then put back on the roof after the new
Yeah,
flat
You
roof.
know what, we're talking here, if
Well, no, we did
allowing
that,
for
what,
that,
3 years ago?
allowing for
It's-
that.
it's
in
great
those
for a
instances,
single
If it
family
was
home.
to save a lot of money,
No,
we
without
could
one.
afford to have a roof repaired that way, but.
But
the
Joe,
point
the
is-
problem is
No.
that the solar companies
Right,
don't offer the incentives to multifamily
right,
units like
it's
they
only
do
single
single-family.
They advertise,
I already checked it out.
Well, here we
All
are,
right.
yeah.
next order of business.
All right.
Okay,
I'm
next
still-
order.
I'm
Wait a minute,
He's not finished with his
I'm
report.
trying. I'm trying to get through this.
Guys, I hate to tell you, it's 7:15,
I'm-
we're
I'm-
running
yeah,
out of
go ahead.
time.
I'm aware. We have to get some of these items back to Jeannie. All right. Water issues aside. All right. Now we got to talk about roof repairs. Jeannie needs to know the roof repairs, whether we can pull it out of reserves, because we need to pull it out of reserves if we can, frankly.
I think so.
All right.
Well, but hold on.
Yeah, we can, it's
If it's currently
If it's
filled out of
community-wide.
community-wide.
Yeah, if it's community-wide, well, Chris may not know this. Any reserve, if it's a community-wide project, we may use the reserve money. If it's just to do 3, 4, 5 buildings, no,
Okay.
we cannot use the
all
reserve
right.
money.
And then the fence repairs, because they're not community wide, we cannot pull out of reserves.
We did pull it out of reserves.
Not the ones that we're still talking about. The ones.
Well, no, I suggested a month or two ago that we have the interest on the reserves.
My understanding of capital items is every building is an asset to the homeowners association.
No, we pulled money out of the
Not
reserves, or
me or
we
you
voted
or her,
to.
Okay?
We voted
And if
to.
you have to fix my roof or a building over the man street, that is a capital improvement.
Okay.
not-
Right.
All right, so
Incidental.
the 15,720 from roof repairs in February, I should tell Jeannie that we should pull it out of reserves.
Whatever's, well, and I have another, you want to pick up another 1,000? We have $1,000 interest in reserves on your current report.
Okay.
We can transfer that interest
I
to
just-
anywhere
I
we
know one
want.
thing for sure. We can pull the maintenance program that we paid $35,000 for. We can pull
Right.
that.
All I need is,
Right.
is specifically
For sure.
2 items right now, because that's the
Yes.
only ones she cares
Anything
about.
like
The two
Mary
items
Lou
are the
said,
15, 7,
anything
20
that's
for roof
community-wide
repairs in
come from
February.
reserve.
Listen to
All right,
what
we're all
he's
talking
saying.
and the
Well,
treasurer's
what the
talking.
president's saying, he's right.
Can we drop the maintenance because it's so expensive or not? Can we drop roof
No, that
maintenance?
saves us money on our
No.
insurance by
Right.
doing that
Right.
every year, and
Already
it's,
paid.
No,
and
but
it's
we will
caught a
see.
lot of.
It's comparison with another
That's
years.
already
How
been
much we
explained.
save?
Let me explain
It's
it.
already been paid.
It saves us a lot of money on our insurance, but more importantly, it saves us a lot of money on interior repairs that we would be responsible
Right.
for if they didn't find these problems and get them corrected.
All right.
Okay,
If we can
and-
get back to the point, I just
It's
have, I
money
just have,
well
I just,
spent.
I just have 2 decisions that I need, guys. It's the only ones, the only things that matter. Okay, roof maintenance package does not matter. I just need 2 numbers because these are the 2 numbers Jeannie
Do it.
cares about. All right,
Do it.
15,720 for roof repairs in February. We can pull that out of reserves.
Yes.
All
The
right.
reserves you're showing here of 7,600.
Yeah, we're gonna
We
pull
may
out.
also-
We're gonna pull out partial.
Okay, now we may also spend the interest.
I'm aware
of
we can move. I'm aware we can
$1,010.
move the
Okay.
interest. I would rather deal with the interest at a different time,
Okay.
so that's just simpler
Well,
for everybody.
well, but we're not finished with
What's the
the
other
fences yet, so there's
Mary
gonna-
Lou, he's
Well, wait.
making a proposal.
All
Let
right,
him
let's
make it and then we
see
can
what's
discuss
next.
it.
Let's see what's next.
All right.
Let it
The
talk.
other one is the 10,762 in fence repairs. Now, from my understanding, this reserve account is empty. That's what it showed on the report that I read. But I'm going to tell her that if she somehow has it on a cash basis, somehow that there's money in there to pull her out of it, pull it out. And if not, it's just going to come out of operating, which is where it's currently allocated.
Keep in mind too, these are non-statutory reserves.
Right.
Just because we itemize and we're funding certain categories, we can pull money for anything we want.
Okay.
Out of anything. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know.
So you're getting a yes.
Right, okay. That's the only 2 things I needed from that. All right. The third item, the last one. Okay. I believe very badly that we need to, as a board, do an HOA budget reserve study. One hasn't been done in a long, long time,
That was
and
what
we
I
can
was
we can tell we
Did
can
we
t-
do what, Chris? I'm sorry.
an HOA reserve study. In theory, in Florida, you're supposed to do these every couple of years. I couldn't find one on file, so I'm going to assume that it was done in the statutory limits. But from what I can understand, one doesn't exist.
Well, except
Okay.
we have continued to fund the reserves.
Well, we're putting in
It's,
over
it's,
8,000.
it doesn't matter. The
Well,
law
what that
the
means
law
we're
requires
paying
it doesn't. It does not matter. The
Okay.
law specifically requires that an HOA of a certain size, which ours is, must do an HOA reserve study. If there's no
I recall we did one, but it's
Right.
going back to
anyway.
Sally.
The point
Back
is,
to
since
Sally.
I don't have it, I can tell you it's not been done in the last 3 years. I'm going to assume it was done in year 4 or 5. It does not. Whether
No,
it
it
was done or
hasn't
not
been done
doesn't
since
matter to
probably
me.
15
However, we
or
do know
14.
that based on the earlier talk about how some of these, operating expenses and reserve accounts are underfunded or in some cases overfunded, I think it is prudent that we perform an HOA reserve study. I think it would be good to get a motion. We'll go out and get bids for it, but I think we need to get this done as soon as possible.
All right, now you did say when we spoke earlier
Right.
that if you had the audit for 2019.
The audit is not the same as a reserve study. They cover completely different things.
Right.
But
right.
you said it would tell you a lot.
It would
Yes.
audit would definitely help you, but an audit does not cover the same things as a reserve study does.
Okay.
And there's a massive difference in what they're covering, and there's a legal difference too.
Well, possibly the company that does our audit could do a reserve study for us.
I would suggest that there are companies that out there that specifically specialize in this. A lot of them are highly rated. I think we should get 2 or 3 of them to come in. They don't have to give us a presentation. Just give us a number. We look at their ratings. We look at other HOAs that they've serviced. We can talk to their board. And I think we should do one. And I think
Okay.
we should get moving on this as soon as possible because they normally take, generally 2 to 3 months to do. And the key for us is, since we know that we're going to have a drastically different budget, I can tell you that much. We're not going to fund maintenance for roofs at $15,000 again for the third year in a row or fourth year in a row.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to do this as soon as possible so that we can get it done and start formulating a budget so that instead of what we did last year and the year before, which was go to the November meeting and then try to come up with a budget, we have at least a month or two of actually being able to look
All
at it.
right, so this doesn't require a motion. I'm going to ask Randall to get us 3 bids on audit review studies.
HOA
Or
budget,
on-
it'd be
what is
HOA
it?
budget reserve study.
Budget reserve study.
It's an HOA reserve study. That's the only other thing. And I think one other last item, which does not require a motion, I think that next month we need to go, as during this meeting on the agenda, we need to come up with a list of capital. What are the things we would like to get done over the next 3 months so that when we have the budget reserve people here, we make sure that those items are covered and we make sure that we are starting to plan for them. I think we need to get it done as soon as possible.
Well, that would be
That's-
September, October latest.
I concur.
Yeah, we start in September on that.
Right.
Okay, so Randall will get us the 3 bids that we need for that.
All right, and thus closes the treasurer's report. Thank
Okay,
God.
thank you, Chris. Very good. It's the most, I
best
have to
that we
say,
ever
the
had,
most
yeah.
in-depth one that we've had in a while. So
Yeah.
Finally.
I appreciate it. Now, we're going to have Randall do the manager's report.
Well, we're kind of running out of time, but I'll make it quick. There's not a whole lot to it. Like landscaping, I don't think I really need to talk much about that. Irrigation, I could say that we have to be careful about usage, that we're, governed by the South Florida Water Management District. We've gone over a couple times. If you go over 3 times in a 12-month period, they can pull your permit to be able to use the waters for irrigation.
Do we have a way of knowing our usage for a given month in real time? Like, would we know if we're about to go over before we get the number from them, or how do we measure? They
Well,
actually
the meters. We have 4 meters that we take a reading each month.
Okay.
I put them into a spreadsheet that calculates what the usage is.
Okay.
If we would basically have to take a reading more than once a month.
Okay.
Like maybe twice a month, the middle of the month to kind of try and see where we're at.
Yeah.
But it's not something that we have to worry too much about as far as, because sometimes it happens during the drought. And
Yeah.
as soon as it starts raining again, it solves everything. But it's more about just keeping on top of repairs, knowing, there's if you got a break, like I've had, a few lately that, you discover just walking around, walking the dog, or Edva, he'll find stuff that, that's a break and it's
Could we turn that fan?
consuming, it's consuming.
No, is that ridiculous? I'm just dying.
order in on it.
I'm just dying here.
But we just have to keep an eye on that. Tree maintenance,
It's spoiled with air conditioning.
we have to.
How are you? I didn't know you snuck in.
You're a big fan.
Yeah. All right, guys, come on. The Randall's
Sorry,
giving a report
sorry. I
here.
just said hello to an owner. I didn't know he was here.
Tree maintenance, we've discussed about moving forward with at least a few trees.
Yeah.
I contacted all roads that we've already approved and got, a quote.
Well, then let's do
So,
it. Let's not talk about it anymore.
But there's a lot involved in getting it going.
And the other thing is Randall and I agreed that he and I are going to go around. Anybody else wants to go to determine which ones we need to do first?
So we do Saturday, right?
I thought we
I
had
can't-
already
We already
decided.
I thought we were tabling this until we look at our
How much we can
finances.
decide?
Well, no,
Next
we have
Saturday.
178,000 in trees.
Yeah, well, maybe we got too
I
much
can
in
do it.
trees. This is
Well,
the thing.
these
I'm
trees
going
need
to
to
be
be
off
done.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, then-
But we already decide. We already picture
We
it.
voted
and,
it. We
No,
voted
there's,
it. We
there's
approved
other
it.
issues that have come up that's causing us nightmares with our sewer,
Yeah.
drainage,
Roofs
lines,
inside the
and
house.
it's crazy. So we have to reassess which ones we're going to do first, because these ones that are affecting the sewers are costing us
A lot of money.
A
we're responsible.
But he
also.
already knows. You know what is tree. Why do you need another time decide what to? You know
Because
already
we
the
have
trees.
to mark them, we have to have the
Because
utility companies come out
They
and
have
mark
to be
them so
flagged,
that they have to be
permitted. We have
flagged.
to
so
get
we-
permits to do this.
No, now they don't ask in permits. Now new law, no permits.
Okay.
No permits. I send
I'm
everybody
talking to
last
the
year
tree
change.
company, and they're telling me what I
I
got to
will
do.
send you the
So
Florida
Randall
law.
and I are
Florida
gonna
law
do it
change.
Tuesday,
I hope. That'd be
or
nice.
Wednesday, we'll see which day works better for him, but we're gonna do it this week, and we'll keep you posted if anybody wants to join.
I just know that it would be nice to not, I mean, I could walk on 51st and show you 10 places where the trees have never been replaced. So I would like to keep a record. If we cut down 9 trees and we don't replace them this year, I'd like us to have a chart of, so that next year we could begin to replace
You and
those
I will
trees.
be long gone before whatever we plant at is going to be called a real tree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
You're not
now-
gonna put a maple or an oak, Florida
We have
approved
tabled
trees?
pressure cleaning until the end of summer,
Right.
and we're gonna work on the trees this week to get those removed,
Okay.
the ones that are causing us the biggest problems. Now, under new business,
I think Randall was doing his report.
Manager's report, yeah.
no, you finished, Randall? Okay, go ahead.
I'll try to finish real quick. I mean, we still got the concrete repairs, so we still have to kind of run around and figure, we want to assess which ones we want to tackle first, which kind of coincides with the trees that,
Yes,
we're-
are uprooting the concrete.
So in parking, we already approved the parking decal thing, so I kind of hit a snag a little bit with ordering a decal because we want the sticker that's going to be on the inside, correct?
Right.
So I wanted to get one, it's just a simple thing, it says parking permit, it's like a little square almost, and so it has the word parking permit on the top, and then the lower part of it is a blank, right? Because some you can order, they have numbers or whatever. Well, I don't want those, because the numbers will mean nothing. I want to be able to write a number in this blank spot. I want to actually put the number of the parking space that you're assigned to.
Right.
However, if the adhesive is on the front part of it, so you got to peel off the adhesive in order to have to write something on it. I don't even know how that's. I've been talking. They can't even give me an answer. How am I going to do that? You got to stick. You got to peel it off. Oh, and then the other thing.
And we can't order them with pre-printed numbers?
They won't do it. They'll have preprint. They'll have numbers, yeah, but not in any kind of numbers
So
that we want.
would have to cross-reference them, and that could be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you have a
originally
house
when we
number,
moved here.
a park
Yeah.
backstop number.
It's
and
the
then-
number.
So,
will
and then the
fade
other
it,
thing
yeah.
is, as far as, okay, even if I could write the numbers, which I could probably pull it off, writing the number in, whether it's a stamp or me writing the number. But now, I've got to mail these to the owners. I can't put them in an envelope now that I've taken the thing off to go right in it, so that's not
Can we
going to work.
get
That's
them
not gonna work.
pre-printed? Mary Lou had a good idea. Can we get them pre-printed with the unit number, like mine, 6005,
Right.
two of them?
Right.
Well,
No, they cannot
the
do
unit
it.
number, you don't want that. The whole purpose of the number on the parking head, that's not a unit number now, so a predator or, a criminal or something can't put the two together. Oh,
I see what you're
hey,
saying. Okay.
Well, you wouldn't
That's
put,
Larry's car. That's his unit number. And then, they attack, your car.
But
That's
if you
why the
write
number's
down,
different.
it will fade it on the
but
side.
the parking backstops are all
that's
different
true,
too, so
but
that would still
it will.
identify Larry's number. The parking backstop
okay.
number would.
So we're
So
still,
what's
that's
the
still
difference?
work in
All right,
progress.
so
But
that's
can you
a-
order
So
something for
anyway,
every
I'm
decals,
probably going to go
it
with something
works.
more simple.
Simple, yeah.
I'm going to go with that. All right.
Okay.
So,
There's a-
lease expirations now. We tabled pressure cleaning till probably the fall.
Right.
Pest control, I know you guys haven't really wanted to talk about it, and I know Natalia, doesn't like the idea, but I get so many complaints about ants and bugs and stuff, and it's...
But they're not from the ficus trees, and that's a
I'm
lot
not
of
talking
money.
about
But
ficus
that's in
trees.
your quote.
I know, but forget that. Should I just take it out? That's just there for information purposes. Doesn't mean we're doing it. I just have it there because it was something that we were looking at in the past for treating the ficus, because that's when the white flies were killing us.
Right.
They've been gone, but they're going to be back. then we'll all be up in arms again about it. So that
Well,
was
but we
just
didn't spray the trees then.
We
got
never
rid of
sprayed.
it.
They don't spray the trees, they
They
treat
do
the
you do the
bulbs.
hedges and
They
the
treat
tree
the
bulbs.
bulbs.
They
They
treat
treat
the
the
tree bulbs,
Yeah.
right.
So anyway, I get a lot of complaints about it. Natalia seems to think, well, chemicals, all that stuff. All they do is go 2 feet up the wall and 4 feet out away from the perimeter of the building. So there's nobody's walking their dog right next to the building. So, I mean, that's just something that's not gonna be, it's not gonna affect, you know, people in the way that Natalia thinks. So anyway, it's just something that, like,
But it's never
telling you.
worked. How many times we
We said-
invited them? It's always, I remember from
What doesn't
2001, every time they invited some company to spray around against the mosquitoes, all
This
the
is
time
a-
I needed go to buy something.
6 times a
It
year.
did myself. They did not, never work.
Okay,
you
well,
know?
like I said,
Maybe your
can I
company
give,
will
all
work.
right, can I give them your phone number and email so you can explain why
I
you
don't
want
need
to
to
do
talk to
it?
anybody. I
No,
don't
of
trust
course you
them.
don't, but I do, right?
All right.
I do, right?
Okay.
All right,
What else?
So anyway,
Security
I'll just tell them
surveillance.
that the board
I have
absolutely
experience,
refuses to, do it, that's all. I mean, I don't know what else to say to them, but I'm the one who has to deal with it.
We have no money right now.
So anyway,
Did we ever get a quote from 3A Right Way to
yeah,
do that?
long time
Triple A.
ago.
I thought I saw one, it's
Yeah.
pretty expensive.
Actually, it's not that bad. It was like 16 grand for the whole year. It's,
But that was including the ficus trees.
no.
Yeah, that was one of the 3 lines.
Uh,
Well, I don't have it with me, but it was broken out. It was broken
We can move
out.
on to the point.
Can we
next thing,
move-
yeah.
Anyway, you guys aren't even interested in
Okay, let's move.
All right, well, we may be interested more once we get some of this other stuff resolved. Now, the last thing on the agenda, if you're finished, is I had a homeowner who's very concerned about security surveillance. And she sent a letter to me, actually. And as a result of the break-ins over at Whitehall, there was 38 cars last weekend broken into. Now, I know from experience that Whitehall, any community along Village is more susceptible because they're easy in, easy out versus coming deep into the community. Although my cameras do pick them up occasionally, coming around checking car handles, even though they see the cameras, they still check the car handles, but they don't usually, once they see the cameras, they just keep walking. But they're checking us out, believe me. And I'm just trying to figure out a way, and Randall thought that we may do some, and I thought as well that we might just do the entrances in and out of our community, like 50 and 51st Way, put a camera there so that we, with a license plate reader. So at least we would know if there was damage done in there. We could check and see if any of these people had criminal backgrounds or whatever.
Yeah, but it wouldn't help us at all, though. We have to catch them. The camera doesn't do us any good if we don't catch them in the actual act of doing the thing.
Well, yeah, I know, the surveillance.
I'm more about the
May
camera,
we check with the
dumpsters and
police
parking area.
and see if how many we've had in, we know about Whitehall.
So-
Could we
Yeah.
check with the local police
Well, they're supposed to be.
and let us know
So
how many?
there's-
Here's what I asked Joe, and then I'll let Chris speak.
Okay,
I asked Joe if he could check with the POA.
yeah.
Why do we have somebody driving around at night that's 80 years old that isn't?
He doesn't drive around at
Get
night.
involved with that?
He's
Why
not
do-
allowed to drive around.
He's not allowed to
at
drive at night.
I told you that.
Okay, but-
His hours are daylight hours only, and the city of West Palm and the sheriff's department, we don't want any civilians out at night patrolling.
And they're not allowed to.
Okay?
Right.
Now,
That's it.
then we have that in our favor when we go over and ask them to patrol. If they don't
So-
want anybody else to do it, they need to provide it.
Yeah, at nighttime it's robbery.
Chris, you got
I have been. Okay, the city
Go ahead.
of West Palm Beach holds. There was more of them under Muno. I don't know how many it is under the new mayor. They're called neighborhood meetings. They're held every 2 to 3 months, and they consist of the mayor, the heads of the Department of Engineering, the police assistant, or somebody from the police department, and they go through. Everybody from the Western District communities, which is what this area is considered part of, is allowed to attend. And as part of this presentation that they do, that you can go and attend, I've gone to them for many, many years now. They do a summary of all of the crime for the given areas, how many people they arrested, who got arrested, what they're looking at, their different patrol units, the whole 9 yards. Okay? All of this has already been covered during their thing. Because I know this because, what's his name from the POA?
Ron Warnicki.
Ron Warnicki goes to it with me every time.
Because we have a report from our security every meeting that we have.
Right.
He tells us what's going on.
Right. And at these meetings, they've talked about this a lot. So first of all, again, like Joe said, the guy who's, I forget his name, the guy who has the Citizens Patrol car is explicitly not allowed to drive at nighttime hours. Okay? The City of West Palm Beach Police Department treats this area on generally what they like a case basis. They don't really have set patrols or try to preemptively go at things. When they get a bunch of reports, basically the way that they're operating is they catch their guy, and then that's it. It's like that. They consider themselves wiped clean. Because for them, they consider the Western community as a patrol area. So the same people who work here, the same people who work at IBIS, and so forth. And from what I have talked to the mayor, literally in these meetings over and over and over again, about trying to get more patrols out here. They will not do it. They don't see this as a high crime area, despite the ironic part that they release numbers for the meeting for everyone to read, and you can clearly see that the numbers here are higher than anywhere else in the city. They'll attribute it all the time. I'll tell you exactly what they'll tell you. They'll say it's because 45th and Military, high crime area because it's commercial. And then, Village is, it's Village. All right? But Cumberland, doesn't have it. The same amount of crime that you have in here is the same amount that Heritage has off of Sarah, what is that? It's not
Saratoga?
No,
Shiloh.
Shenandoah.
Shenandoah.
Or Shiloh, rather.
Shiloh.
Right? They are not willing to do it. The only way that they are going to get people to do it is if more people show up at these meetings and starts calling them and pestering them. Because me and Ron, it can give them hell every time, but it doesn't change their mind.
I was going to say they're not making many arrests in here because they're never here.
No, because what they do is they treat the Western communities are treated very differently. It's very apparent. They won't admit it, but you can read when they give their whole presentation. It's very clear.
So this is where they get most of their tax money, but the least of their
Right.
coverage.
They consider a case basis. So as soon as they get a rash of reports and the citizens start complaining, they'll go out, they'll catch their person and they'll leave. Now they also don't patrol any of the parking lots or anything like that. So how they catch it takes forever for them to catch it. It takes them months to catch something that should be obvious if they just went out with people in station.
Drug dealers to them, and
Right.
they haven't caught them yet, and
Right.
they're actively working.
Right, and that's the thing. Now the only other effective method that I have seen, other than people calling, for them ever to get more patrols, is if Corey Nearing, the commissioner, right, asks them to do it, because when he asked them to stop the speeding on Village, I don't know if you've noticed the last several weeks, there are
police
people.
out there.
They have police out there. They have signs out there. Suddenly, magical. It's not related somehow. Magically, they're there. Okay, that is the only methods. The two methods that work. Nothing else seems to work with them. So I think the thing to do is to petition him and say, "Look, you live. Where does he live? He lives over there, right? Right, because he lives in Lakes of Laguna. You live across the street from this crime. Can we get more patrols?"
Well-
I think the second thing we need to do is we need to petition the mayor more, because look, at the end of the day, the Western communities, which is considered District 5 for them, provides a massive amount of their tax revenue and doesn't, in my opinion, at least comparative to the crime rates that we see, get an appropriate level of policing.
May
It's
I
not
jump
in
in here and
Go
just say
ahead, Mary.
something quickly? If we get a rash of break-ins like we had a year or two ago, and the homeowner calls the police, because their car's been broken into, which is what they should do, then that's why we need to keep going, checking regularly with our local police here, and see how many break-ins in
Lots.
Lake South have been
It's
reported.
continuous.
No, now hold on, excuse me. The last time we had, at a board meeting last year, we had a policewoman come
Right.
and give us a report. It was not dramatic for our community, if you recall. It was not, compared to 524.
Not a big issue.
Yeah, it was not a big issue when
Right.
you have over 1,000 cars
Sure,
parked in our
sure.
community. So it was not a big issue. So we need to keep in touch with the police department, local, and see how is Sandalwood Lake South doing.
Well, Next Door Village app on your computer, if you want to download that app, it's called Next Door. It covers all these villages and people.
I'm
report
computer
crimes.
illiterate. I just got the
I can
computer
tell you
2
though,
weeks
having seen
ago.
having studied extensively
Yeah.
the charts that they provide for the mayor's meetings, over and over again, it's the same. The icons may move, the crime remains relatively level. Every time you'll get about 5 or 6 on the north side of Cumberland in Sandalwoods, 3 or so on the south side of Cumberland, lots in Heritage.
And do you know who it was that did it several years ago? Not several, but a few years ago. They caught them. They were kids here at the high school.
They're always
They were a
catching.
bunch of kids at the high school.
Right, they always catch them, and that's the problem though. The problem is as soon as they catch them, they stop patrolling.
Larry, just to inform you, we got 15
Yeah, and I gotta
minutes.
go back to you,
Yeah, I know.
Randall.
All right, so
Could I just read you Randall's, then we can go on about the proposals for AA Right Way? I found it from the day after the Zoom meeting last
All right,
month.
okay.
Okay. Your first part of your bid was for treating 140 ficus trees for whitefly with a 30 tree discount. The second quote was pest control plan to treat the perimeter of each building 6 times a year for ants, roaches, and silverfish. So that was the 2 categories that you had AA Right Way quote. I don't have the quote with me, but that was the general basis of the quote. So to me, I think it's a waste of money to treat the 140 ficus trees right
No,
now.
it's ridiculous.
But I do think that pest control is, because I don't think we're being
I want
influenced,
to get you in here
influxed
because
with
we're
whitefly.
really limited to 8 o'clock. We've got the,
But
Okay.
question, can we patrol, volunteer on own vehicles? We can find
No,
people?
you
No,
can't.
no, you
Can we
can't
just
legally.
question?
No,
Why
you
not?
can't.
No.
Why not?
Because there's a liability that we don't need to have.
What kind of liability?
Because if somebody got shot,
Suppose that they shoot you.
yeah,
What
you're
kind
out.
of liability? Why
You can sue the
you are
assessor.
responsible? Even
Don't
I
make me
call
wish
myself.
about things like
No, no,
that.
she doesn't know, that she's not aware of it, but,
no, but I mean,
It's the
she
same-
has a good heart, she'll do it.
yeah, no, it's a good idea.
It's a
to
good
do
idea,
it.
but it's the
But
it's-
if you
it's
were
the
shot
same
or
reason-
your car was
It's
rammed,
the same reason
you
why
would
the
be
police
suing
department
us.
is not
Nobody, I will be
allowed to
dead. Mary Lou, I will be dead.
No,
Okay.
Can we have a,
we're not gonna let you do it because
No.
we care too much about it.
Yeah.
Larry, we do have a homeowner that would like to ask a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Larry, I made a request last month.
Would you identify
The
yourself,
bulletin board, what's that?
Would you identify yourself? Your name?
Oh, Stephen Palaio, 5211 52nd Way.
Thank you.
I made a request last month for the
I remember.
screen on the bulletin board. It still hasn't been done. It's just a simple replacement.
It's not a simple
It's,
report.
it's
I
not-
asked Randall to take a look at it, he says it's not as simple as I thought it was.
Okay, but it's not readable. This clear glass.
But don't you spend
It's
90%
so
of your
faded
time
out.
at then the other house and you can read that one though? That's the one you're 90%.
That whole section down there, no one can read it. You know,
Can't
you
read mine on
click-
51st after it rains. Can't read anything in
Like
the
that's a
bulletin boards
bulletin
after it
board
rains.
for all the residents.
Yeah.
I don't see what the big deal is.
We ordered that from a reputable company. Why can't we simply reorder or replace it?
Well, we had a warranty on them originally, but that's long gone.
Yeah, and,
They don't, and we were gonna have them resealed or something, I recall.
Like the weather stripping.
Weather stripping or something done on
Is
the
it
ones.
possible to put
Bring a
weather-
glazier in and let them take
Why?
Well, that's not gonna cure what he's talking about. The one on his is probably like the only one, maybe there's one other in the community out of the 25 that we have, that it's yellow. And
Oh, okay.
it's hard to see through it.
So
Can
new
we
piece of
order a
glass.
new glass for
Well,
it?
that's the whole thing. You can't just don't.
Well, why can't we just have a glass company come
It's
do
not
it?
glass, it's glass.
Plexiglass.
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 Wait a minute,
Plexiglass.
wait a minute, why don't we try what they use on these real dirty headlights?
Yes,
You
all
wipe
the
it off and it
cleaning
makes it
stuff,
like new
yes.
again.
My son did it, it works, it does
try?
work.
Try some of that.
I
Pick
can't
some
think what
of
the
that
name
up.
of it is. My son did
I know
it.
who has it, Pep Boys has it, it's $10.
Yeah, try that on it. That's a good suggestion.
Toothpaste.
That should wipe it clean, just like it does these plastic covers on headlights.
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe
suggestion.
it'll work, so
What
let's
the
try
heck, it'll either
Toothpaste.
work for $10, it's
Toothpaste.
worth finding out if it works.
Toothpaste.
Toothpaste,
Sue me.
Joe says.
Toothpaste will do it.
Treasurer approved idea.
Please plexiglass.
Safe few knots.
You want to move into it?
Not me.
All right, well, does anybody have anything else? they'd like
I
to-
have one thing if no one else has anything else.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Alright, so this is more for Randall. The plumbing. I was gonna bring this up during Treasurer's report, but whatever. Plumbing. The bills for this are just astronomical. What is plumbing? I don't know anything about plumbing.
Oh my God,
What
it's
is
very
going on with the
diversified.
plumbing that I don't know about?
Broken water lines, go ahead, tell them.
Is there a
Backups because of roots.
is there I don't know anything about plumbing. Is it a thing that you can, like a lawyer, put a plumber on retainer? Because that would almost be cheaper at this point. I mean,
plumber on retainer?
yes.
We
if
have-
our-
We have
if our
Buckeye,
plumbing,
they come
We have
out,
Buckeye. They-
I'm aware of
and
this,
they
but
do give us special
if
rates.
our plumbing costs went up by 20%, we could literally save money by employing a full-time plumber.
That's not a bad
No.
idea. I like the point that Randall
Yeah.
raised the question. On our bills, is he jetting all these problem areas? Because that's an extra $500-600 he's
No, I
doing.
mean,
No,
snaking them and then,
Right.
pulling out.
I don't recall seeing jetting in any of the bills.
No.
And
They snake
another
them,
thing
Wait,
pull
about
out
plumbing.
some stuff, and then then they'll put a camera down there to see if there's a major problem, see if
Right.
we really need to not just clear the roof so we can clear the line and then wait another year, then it happens again. Then we go ahead and open it up and
Great if we could find it.
Let me just explain what Buckeye does. They're no different than any other company. They
Plumbing
try to
company.
take advantage of you if they
Sure.
can.
But we have a discount with them, right?
They wanted Randall to remove a tree so that they could to get rid of the roots so that they could clear this water line and replace it because
Right.
it was too close to the tree.
Exactly.
I said, you tell them there's no way we're removing that tree. They can plumb around the root ball with it, and then he called
Yeah.
Bud. Bud
Right.
came over, he looked at it, he says, yeah, we don't need to remove the tree. But yet the guys who come out, I sometimes think they get a commission on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They're
before
not
we,
the brightest star in
All
the
right.
sky.
going back, if it's not possible to put plumber on retainer, which I think,
Yeah, it's too big a
all
problem
right.
an idea.
Anyway,
And unfortunately,
And
Chris,
all-
Buckeye knows it better than anyone.
They've been our company for years.
it would be good to ask them, knowing that we're going to spend a lot more than we budgeted this year on plumbing, because we are way past our budget on plumbing, and knowing that it's not like a problem that's going to go away. It'd be interesting to ask them if there was a way that we could prepay a set amount of plumbing, an amount to be used for later billing, and if they would give us a percentage credit on that, similar to if you have a tab at a bar, except we would get a percentage, additional for fronting the money before we actually
We
need
can
them.
always ask.
I don't think it would hurt to ask. If they come back and say no, look, they say no. On the other hand, if they say yes, and they say 5, 10, 20%, that's 5, 10, 20% of expenses we're definitely
We
going
should
to incur.
definitely be asking for a volume discount.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well, the
know what
property's
they'll come
getting
back at.
older,
They'll
that's
come
the
back
problem.
with that each
Right.
It's
thing-
not only.
And it's the trees, a lot of it. Natalia doesn't want to believe it,
And
but
this reluctance of not having I wanted Edgar to get that rotor rooter and
Well, that's
clear the
what I'm
line.
doing, that's
And
what
if the line didn't clear, then you call the professionals then,
That's what I'm
and you
doing.
tell them to deal with it. But all this nonsense about, it's a lot of line, it's not a big deal.
Well, we need to get a commercial grade snake, nothing that you get at Lowe's or
They sell the one that I told you they had in Harbor Freight, which is a commercial grade. It had the foot pedal on it. It had it was extending about 100 feet or so, 150 feet. It was a good unit, and you could change the
what
blades
was
on
that,
it.
Joe?
It was $169 at the
No,
time.
but I'm saying, where did you see it?
Harbor Freight. I had one when I lived in New York because it was costing me a ton every time I had a bend in my line. Every time I'd have a bend, I'd have to go pull the guy in to rotor-root it. Well, the hell with that. It was costing me like $100 every time I brought him. So I bought a unit and I rotor-rooted myself.
Great advice.
I'm going to have to make a
And
statement
then
before you
teach them
adjourn.
how to use it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm talking about investing in it, so we could, you could do just the minor ones that just unclog, but just,
I mean, that'd save us a hell of a
It would
few
save us a lot
dollars.
of money, if that's a thing.
Yeah, well, the more Edna does, the more money we save.
Yeah.
Because he's on salary. I've been saying that
The only
for
thing
4
is,
years.
it might be a temporary fix because he's only going to go as far as he can see. How much would a camera cost?
Oh, God, that's.
No, you're not gonna get into him doing professional
No,
siding.
no.
His job is to clear what appears to be a basic clog
Right.
and open it up. If that's what it does, then we don't need to call Buckeye. But
Right.
if the clog doesn't get relieved because of what he does, then
And
we'll
then
call
if you're
Buckeye.
talking about weekends.
Right. If he can handle it,
Yeah,
handle
but
it.
see, Buckeye comes on the weekends
If
and
he
he
can
doesn't.
handle the $300 bills and suppose instead, and have Buckeye continue to do the $1,000 to $2,000 problems, which are the major ones, we would pay for this within a month or two.
Yeah,
If the rate was
quicker than
fine.
that, probably.
All right,
Right.
may I just say something? I am going to regretfully decline being secretary. I've given it a great deal of thought tonight, and it's just far too much paperwork. I have a small laptop at home that is very difficult to type on. I do not have a printer. I do not have very much time. I appreciate your offering me it, but I think that right now, with the difficulty with work and all the pressure of trying to work, save my sales from home.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yes, okay,
So
so you
I
understand,
understand.
Yeah, and I think I just a little
Okay.
overload.
I understand.
Maybe when I'm back up and running again and the pressure's off,
Okay.
but
All
thank
right.
you,
Well,
Larry.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Just so everybody knows, I'm gonna have to look at somebody and pay them to get these minutes done.
Oh, the plumbers say that.
So-
You put
Well, I'm
drain
30 years and never had a,
All
never.
right.
Maybe Joe or somebody who don't do anything, can you do something? Or Mary Lou
Yeah,
can
Joe,
do and we
you
can't.
don't do anything.
What?
I'm not
What
doing
exactly
the
you're doing for,
minutes.
for association? What Joe
What am I
doing
doing
for
for this
association?
organization?
Why you cannot make very short minutes?
They're
Do it,
really
do it.
not that difficult. You don't have to go into all the details.
Yeah,
You just do
unbelievable.
the generalities of what was
Because
discussed.
it will take 2 hours to listen to the tape
No, you
recording.
don't have to listen to the tape recording. You got notes.
No, I had to stop because once he started talking, I couldn't do it. I don't do shorthand.
Well,
He
what
talked for
all
an
you
hour.
have to say
He
is the
talked for an
treasurer, our treasurer, Chris Christoff, gave an in-depth financials report, letting us know that we're under budgeted on certain line items and perhaps over budgeted on others. We also discussed the possibility of metering individual water meters on units.
I
And,
declined.
That's it.
I declined.
You know,
I
you know.
declined.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I declined.
Joe, you think you can handle it?
No.
That they
All
don't
right,
do
so I'll find
anything, okay?
somebody and then we're gonna have to pay him to do it.
And we do plenty of things, my dear.
Oh
You may
my
not
God,
know
I
Out
it.
of
see
curiosity.
what everybody doing.
I walk 50th and 51st and
As a
52nd almost
shortcut
every
measure,
day.
can the
And I
transcripts
report
be
to Randall
not
every
counted
problem
as-
I see.
If that's the case, then you wouldn't have to, because we already
Yeah.
have.
And Randall can attest to the
I
fact,
agree.
I spent every bit of 4 to 6 hours a day on this association.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Now that I've been home.
I do more than my
I've been
share,
home
so I
more.
know for sure I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But we'll pay somebody to do it.
I
Not a
think
problem.
this, if, and I had suggested this months ago when we got our own office, that we find a nice young college student or somebody that needs to make a few bucks,
We
who,
can't have her too nice and be in that office alone with Randall. I'm looking for somebody
you mean
that's,
she might smack
you
him?
know, she might have to do Braille to get what it's all
No,
about.
but seriously, for minimum wage, for whatever the minimum wage, $7 an hour, whatever it is, have some young gal that has
I
typing skills.
suggested we pay Pam to do it.
Well, but Pam works. Yeah.
She seems to be such.
Well, she's at
trouble
home right
with
now.
finance or
Can we
whatever,
have more
and it would
people
help
on the
her
board?
get-
We do not have a vice president, and we do not have a secretary. I offered to be vice president because, just to be a signature, because you were the only signature. I wasn't
Yeah,
looking
well,
to
Chris is
assume a lot of
the
res-
signature.
But now you
and
have your second
To
signature.
be honest, we're not required to have a vice president.
No, I understand that. It was purely for a signature, because I
Yeah.
couldn't be treasurer and I didn't want to be
Did you get the
secretary.
email from?
But
So
now the
now
treasurer
we have a
doing the
second
most work.
signature. And
Yes.
we have a treasurer, thank God.
On that sad note, ladies and gentlemen, the
Yeah.
meeting is closed. It's
Adjourn
after
the
our
meeting, Mr.
8 o'clock, we have to be
Mr.
out of here.
Rocco.
And it's 8
Adjourn the
o'clock.
meeting, it's after 8.